Good evening, you guys. This is not how I envisioned us starting off this class, but this will work for us here this evening. Um, Let me grab a pen here at my desk and just see where we're at as far as getting people signed on. Looks like we need a few more people here yet before we really get started. Yay. Okay. Now all the friends are here for the evening. I have to tell you guys, I was sitting on the fence all day. Gretchen and I started talking, I think, this morning at 10. I am not a fan of storms. And so I was already kind of getting a little anxious about it. I just kind of thought, well, if we meet at Goshen College, we'll just kind of leave if we have to. But then I was aware, like now I'm making you guys and myself and everybody like travel home and stuff. So thank you for bearing with me here as we made this decision. Like I said, this isn't how I wanted to sort of try to get to know you guys. I don't love a virtual class just because I want to try to be like available and stuff for you, but we will make the best of this. And I guess the upside is as Gretchen does your clinical orientation, we're going to record it here. And so we'll have that recording that we can go back to for all of us here if we need a refresher on like what did Gretchen say about this. So maybe that's the upside. So with that, Gretchen's going to talk to you guys for the next hour and a half, however long it takes for you guys and her and I to really have an understanding of like what does this next year of getting into these clinical courses start to look for you guys? What's that look like? So, Gretchen, let me turn it over to you, and I'm going to throw treats at my dogs down here. You're muted.
There we go. I clicked it and it clearly didn't turn off. Do I have the ability to share my screen, Jewel?
You should, I think.
Okay. So what is so weird is that I bought a new uh thing to connect to my computer and it doesn't have a screen, so I have to use my computer, but then it blocks things. So I apologize if at some point you're staring at my chest. It's not my intention. So, okay, here, guys. First of all, would it be helpful for them to just go around and say who they are for you, or do you feel like you already
I think
know?
once we're through with kind of the orientation thing, I will
Okay.
switch them over into my class. We'll kind of see what the weather is like.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I have all their pictures here, and I was really trying to be like, I'm going to wow them when I see them and be able to call them by name. And I'm pretty darn close to that. Luckily, there's not a ton of you guys. But yeah, I mean, if there is time this evening, I have a few questions just to ask them. Of it would be
Okay.
helpful for me to know where you're working currently, and then because this is a research class, like refresh me. Have you all taken research, and if so, like how long has it been? So I kind of know, like,
Mhm.
yes, I took this 2 years ago. Yes, I took this 12 years ago. So we'll get to that. But yeah, just jump in, Gretchen, and then
Okay.
I'll do my class get to know you stuff in a bit.
Perfect. Well, I love how this screen shows my lovely chin first. So bear with me as I'm trying to get this screen. So I shared with you earlier today a letter that typically gets sent to you with that schedule that I sent to you or shared with you earlier in the month. And on it, it has some of the stuff that you've already been introduced to just because we've had to start looking for the clinical parts sooner and we started the process sooner. So I did still share it with you because I think it really helps to see everything like in one place. So I put it there as a reminder of stuff, and I thought I'll start with that information. But as we go through this, you know how I roll, guys. I like you to ask me questions, stop me, yeah, if I'm not seeing your hand raised or whatever. But I think that is always helpful for you guys and for me to know that I'm getting across to you what I want. The other thing that I would say too is you've gotten some of this information sent to you, but I want to make sure everyone's doing okay. And I'll emphasize again the same thing Jules said. It's always better for us when we give this kind of information, which is dry and not very fun to go over, to be in person, just so I can see if we're connecting and you're getting it. But at the same time, it is nice to have the video so you can watch it again. So you say, what did we say? But we'll make the best of sometimes not great situation, but at least we're all, warm and dry in our homes. So that's kind of nice. And no one has to worry about hydroplaning on their way home. But let's kind of start with talking a little bit about what we're going to go over here. And I'll probably take like at least maybe like a 5-10 minute break just because I don't know if you're like me. I don't like sitting on a computer for long periods of time. I get easily distracted. Squirrels or whatever go by. Okay, so what we'll talk about first is I'm going to introduce you to the letter, which you, as I said, you got. We'll go over that. We'll also go over in the handbook some of the pieces that really apply to the clinical portion of your training. And then I'll also show you, if you remember back to last year, which is probably so many things coming at you, but there is a course in Moodle called the MSN Meta Course. And really, you probably haven't looked at it too much, but it will become very helpful because it's where we're going to house these forms that I'm going to show you and some stuff. Plus, you can always see the most up-to-date handbook in there as well. So that's always nice because even though you were given a hard copy of the handbook, I'm going to bet that most of you probably don't have it easily accessible most of the time. So that's why we're going to go over that today. And then we'll also end, then probably take a break after that portion and then end with going over how to actually use Typhon. And what's so hard about Typhon is I can show this to you, and until you're using it and you fully are entering stuff in on a regular basis, it will seem a little foreign. So usually about halfway through the fall semester is when students start to say to me, okay, I get this now. And you'll realize you maybe need to go back and edit some things. Don't panic. We'll talk about how that is going to go and all that stuff as we go through. But that said, any big questions before I get going on the letter that I shared and so forth? Okay, good deal. Okay, here. So this is where I have to put on my glasses so I can do two things at once, which is look up and also be able to read. So, one of the first things I wanted to draw your attention to is under preparation, if you have the letter in front of you, preparation for clinicals. This is the part we kind of started earlier than we normally do, so that I think has thrown everything off a little bit. But I gave you access to the VCI. Lisa is probably the main, like, leader in that process just because she works in the system for Jewel and I and whomever else will be in this role. Um, so she is going to be your best resource for that. But what I want to make sure everyone understands is it's super confusing, and I think I kind of laid it out a little bit more here. But when you sign into the VCI form or system and you put the code in, it starts a time clock. And so if you don't finish all the pieces, including that drug screen, in that 60-day window, once you start to enter in, it'll ask you, that like if you wanted to extend it, it sends a message to us asking to extend it. Again, I don't usually talk about it as early as we did, but because of all that's going on, I did. So a couple of you have asked for extensions to get that urine drug screen, and that's totally fine. Um, I am not sure if there's a way, and Jewel pipe in if you know, but I don't know that there's a way for me to, just change the due date for all of you. But if you need more time, let us know because once that window closes, you'll have to pay $40 to get that extension. But if you give that extension a request before then, I can usually get them to, they've been emailing me and I just give them an extension time. Make sense? Is everyone good with that? Okay. So in there, you probably saw you're going to submit all your immunizations. I believe when we sent out the new sheet talking about VCI, that Lisa sent you a form called the verification of health insurance form and verification of health form. Do you remember seeing both of those? I'm seeing some head nods. I'm going to show you where you,
Yes.
so, okay, thank you. I'm going to also show you in the meta course where that is so that if you need to print another one off to upload it up into the VCI for you to verify those two forms, you'll have to do that again next year. You won't have to resubmit all your immunizations again next year. You'll just have to update a few things like TB and flu. Um, and then the verification of health and insurance form. Does that make sense? Everyone good with that? Okay. Um, Technically, we don't you don't have to have everything due till the middle of August. I put on here the August 18th. However, again, once you sign into VCI, you will have 60 days from that point moving forward to get your urine drug screen. So that's the confusing part. And so that's what you want to make sure you either request an extension or that we somehow communicate about that so that it doesn't go and you have to pay the $40. You won't have to have done this yet, but by the fall, we have a reminder to everyone to get their flu shot. We're going to talk about this in the handbook, but immunizations is one of those things that these aren't our rules per se, although as primary care providers and in knowing how important it is for us to be immunized so that we, A, don't bring something to our patient, but B, also don't bring something home to our families. We really emphasize this piece, but it's really up to the individual clinical sites as to if they will, work with a student who does not necessarily have all these immunizations on board. So one-on-one, please feel free to reach out if you have questions about that. I'm sure Jules going to talk about this, but at this point, we don't have one specific point person taking over for my role, but Jewel is going to be your main point of contact, and they are in the process of interviewing. So I think you got to meet one of the candidates, if I remember right. Is that you guys? Yeah. Okay. So you got a head start actually in knowing who might be working with you. Um, Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about from the verification form I sent out to you is that you got sent two modules. One's about HIPAA and one's about bloodborne pathogens. Those are when we do an affiliation agreement with each of the offices or clinical sites that you guys will work with. On there, it says we have reviewed all that material and that you have completed these modules. So that's why those modules are needed to be done. Okay. I have it being due a little bit earlier. I don't control that. I have to reach out to someone within our organization to do that. But the reason we had it done a little earlier is simply because I wanted to get it done since I'm not going to be here to help with that piece of waiting later in the time. So we'll get a list of everyone that's completed it. So if you have not completed it by the 30th of June, we'll know that and we'll be reaching out. So please, please, please get those done because they're not too tough. It's kind of like all the fun stuff you get to do at your employers for your yearly educational stuff.
And Gretchen did say you guys only have to do it once. So this
Hmm.
isn't an every year sort of thing. So try and get that done for us if you can.
Yeah, you'll just do it now. Oh, excuse me. You do it now, you don't have to do it again. Gotta love these allergies. Love them, love them. So, excuse me as I cough again. The other thing I did put on there for you, and I think if you looked at the schedule that I sent out, is the skills day. Katie, who you have now, is going to be teaching that along with Dina. We had previously in the past years actually had brought another company in, but now that we have our facilities and are really, building our simulation center, we have taken over that process. So you luckily will just have to work with us. And it's an all-day event. She'll give you the exact times closer to the time, but I want you to block that October 6th date because that's when we'll do a lot of skills in preparation for things that you can do in the clinical setting, working with your preceptor. You won't be like checked off and now an expert. You'll just have been educated on it so you can do that. You should not be doing any type of procedures that we haven't gone over in class. And absolutely under no circumstances, which I'll talk about this later when we go through the handbook, should you be doing things like circumcisions, or if your provider does vasectomies in the office, they'll try to goat you into it because they want you to get the experience. But our malpractice insurance does not cover you to do those things. And that also includes things like IUDs and Exponons. You can certainly watch them, but you can't personally do those ones. Okay. Does that make sense? Awesome. Um,
Yes.
I think those are the big things from there. Any questions on that? I'm going to show you go over to the meta course here now, and then we'll go to the handbook. Okay. So this is where we're going to see if I can get all my fun stuff up here for you. And I'm going to go back to the main screen so that you can see where I'm going to this. They've redone this now, and so I got to figure out where woo, that was fun. I don't know if you can still, guys can still see me, but I just lost all of you. Um, where is the share screen now at? Bear with me here. Oh, there we are. I was blocking it. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now I'm trying to move you guys out of the way because it keeps wanting to put you on it. Okay. So when you're on this screen, when you sign in to Moodle, which happily it is actually working now, so that's great. Um, you will come over to here. It has all your courses, and you could potentially search for it here, but it's always housed over here, and you won't have near the number of courses that I do over here. So it'll look easier. But if you go to this MSN Meta course, and I don't know who named it. I'm sure there's one of the people in the foundational processes of our programs who called it a meta course, but anyway, that's what it's called. So once you get here, there's a list of things you can, like windows that you can choose to go over. So the most basic one is just welcoming you to the meta course and kind of giving you a directory, but it's the same things that are up here. So in all honesty, I don't think there's a whole lot there. Textbook information, you know how to get your list of textbooks. But if you need a link and a reminder, there is one in here. The one that I want you to be familiar with and what we're going to go over a little bit tonight are things under the clinical documents, but I'm just going to introduce you again to the program documents. That talks about here's the list to the handbook. Here's the schedule for each class based on when you're going to graduate. So we have named each cohort by a Roman numeral, which very few people use Roman numerals anymore. So we're kind of moving to trying to just think of you as the cohort of 2028, because that's when you'll graduate, right? So that's when that's what you would click on, and that's where you would find the schedule. If for some reason you misplaced the link to what I had sent out to you guys. Okay. And then one of the things we're going to go over here next is your clinical documents, and then we'll go back and talk about the handbook. So at the beginning of each clinical rotation, you will work with your preceptor. You'll determine what hours you're going to be, and so forth. And then throughout the clinical time, you'll need to verify the hours that you're doing with your preceptor each time you're with them. And so for that, what you'll do is you'll use this clinical verification form. And just because I'm not sure if it's going to open up, um, I can try. Let me try. Let me see if it works, guys. You tell me if you can see it. Can you see this Goshen College FNP? Love when technology works. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. So this is the form that you need to keep. So every single time you're in clinical, you're going to say the date, how many hours you spent with your preceptor. Okay. If you take a half hour for lunch or an hour, just subtract that time, and you'll put that there. You'll have your preceptor sign the number, or excuse me, his or her name, and then you'll put here the number of patients you saw. And we're going to go over this again as we go through Typhon, but I'm going to emphasize you do not need to see every patient that your preceptor sees. That's usually not going to be most beneficial for your learning. Now, in the beginning, first few days of the rotation, you may spend more time doing some observation to kind of get the lay of the land and how that preceptor organizes his or her day. But you do not necessarily want to see all those preceptors because or all those patients because your head will spin. And there are some preceptors, which is this is the way, unfortunately, that our a lot of providers get paid is they try to see as many as they can, right? That doesn't make for good learning. I'd much rather have you and your preceptor look at your schedule, or their schedule in the beginning of the session, which each session I consider morning and afternoon, right? And look and say, okay, here's what we have coming in. I'm going to go and try to see, these would be good patients for you to start seeing on your own. And then, maybe get a history and gather, what's going on and get a preliminary idea of what you want to do. Maybe even do the physical assessment and then come out and talk with your preceptor. That may not be where you start, but I want you to get there within that first rotation pretty early, so that you're getting experience. Because the sooner you start doing it, as you remember from nursing school, the sooner you start getting out there and doing it, the better you're going to feel. You're not going to get everything right. No one ever does. But you know how to take care of patients and you know how to talk to them. Now we can get to take you to the next level of being able to diagnose and develop a plan of care and go through a differential list of possibilities. You're never going to be right all the time, but I want you to get the practice. And so trying to do, 30 patients in a day is not going to be conducive. You might see in some days 5 or 6 patients. Great. That is really okay. You're going to see in the Typhon system where you record your hours per patient. I will tell you, sometimes it's going to look like you're spending an hour to an hour and a half per patient. That's okay. I don't care. That includes looking up things, reviewing a diagnosis. It's okay. It is part of the learning process. Um, but do not expect this number to be huge. I don't need it to be. In fact, when I start seeing that these numbers are huge, I get worried because then those students often are struggling to keep up with everything that they're trying to learn. Okay.
So, Gretchen, I'm hearing you say that you want these to be quality interactions where these students really are understanding what is going on with this patient rather than the quantity. Again, you
100%.
guys are recording hours. You're not It's not 750 patients, it's 750 hours. And then my other interjection here too, Gretchen, is throughout the time, they are always seeking out pediatric patients, correct? And maybe women's health. Can you say some more about that? I might be getting ahead
Yeah.
of us a little bit, but if you can
Nope.
talk to them about that would be helpful too.
Sure, sure. So we're going to go over here a little bit more as we go through the handbook, but it's never, again, this is one of those points that I think it's worth hearing more than once as well, is that when you graduate here, you will need to have 750 clinical hours. We expect that you'll see patients of all ages and ranges and diagnoses, but we did tease out some areas that maybe if you don't like, you tend to gravitate away from, but I want to make sure you get a minimum of. So, of those 750 hours, 125 minimum need to be with women's health issues, and 125 minimum need to be with pediatrics. And I'll show you in Typhon when we go over that portion where you're recording stuff, how you're you can mark it off. Pediatrics for our purposes is anywhere from 0 to 21. But the system will easily tease out those students who are, excuse me, those patients that are under 18, but it's that 18 to 21 range that I have you check a box so it makes it easier so you don't have to go back and we don't have to count them. Okay. And you could be writing reports as you go through your years of clinical, and I can show you how to do that. But there's also places that if you forget, don't worry, there's a video to show you. Always, always, always. A lot of students will at least get the patient's initials and some basic information while they're in clinical, or you can make yourself a little cheat sheet and be writing some stuff down and go in and enter it. But within 7 days, you will be locked out of being able to enter or make edits to that entry. Okay. We'll talk about when there are times that they get opened up for you to go back in and correct something if it's wrong, because errors happen. We get that. But bottom line, by the time you graduate, you have to have 750 patient hours, and that does not include anything in simulation. It's all direct contact. Okay. We good with that? Okay, so the other thing I will say here is if you end up having you work with a couple days another preceptor in the office because your preceptor is, either is a good case she wants you to get in on, or it's just a couple cases during the day, I would just put your preceptor's name and have her or him or her sign that off. You don't have to differentiate that out. But if you are literally spending maybe a quarter of your time or more with two separate preceptors, you can do it a couple different ways. You can put them both on the same page, and then at the bottom of that page, tease out how many hours were with this preceptor and how many hours are with the other preceptor. Or you can have you can print this off as many times as you want, and you could have one that has all the hours with the one preceptor and all the hours with the other, and then submit them both at the end. I just need to be able to see, and whomever is reviewing them needs to be able to see exactly how many hours you spent with each preceptor. Because we actually send letters of verification to the preceptors if they want to count this towards their certification. And that's nothing that you'll need to worry about, other than I just need to have an accurate, as close as possible amount of hours you spent with each preceptor. Okay. And then at the end of this form, whichever one is your final page for the thing, just make sure you include all the hours totaled up for the form. If you again up having two for different preceptors, that's fine, but just total each of them up so I or whomever is looking at it can see that. Okay, let's see if my mouse will go away. Okay, are you seeing now the preceptor midterm eval here? Midterm? Okay. So there are, and I'm going to open just one. I'm not going to open all of them, but I want you to know there is a midterm preceptor form and there is a midterm self-student evaluation form. And then there's a final final preceptor form and a final student form. You need to complete all four of those. Okay. And there's a place for your preceptor to even sign even your student self-evaluation. Because when you guys are going through midterm and they're giving you the feedback halfway through the semester of how things are going, we want to make sure that you're showing how you see yourself to them so they know where you think you are. Because if there's a big disconnect and the preceptor, thinks you're looking like you're doing great and you're feeling like you are not connecting, well, that's a disconnect and we need to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So the other thing, and I've alluded to this many times as I've spoken to individual students, but you will be assigned someone to come out and do at least one evaluation during the course of your rotation. If things are not going well, or you're struggling, or your preceptor doesn't seem to be a good fit, we want to know that as soon as possible. Please don't let it go and wait till the end of the semester to tell us. But we want to at least be out to see everybody at least once. And when we come out, it's usually around halfway through, ballparking it. And we're going to ask to see the midterm self-evaluation and the midterm preceptor evaluation. So make sure you have done those, and it is up to you to print them off and hold on to them. Most of the time, I recommend that preceptors not collect them, that you keep everything together. I just find when papers get separated, life is not good. That way you can hand everything in at the end. Okay. If you have, again, a preceptor that you're with only a couple days or something like that, don't worry about having them do a form. They don't have to evaluate you. But if you're with two separate preceptors and you're splitting your time almost evenly, then I want each preceptor to fill it out. So then that you might even have more forms, right? A midterm and a final for two different preceptors, which makes it just a little bit bigger. You still only have to do one self-eval, but okay, so let's look and see what's on them. And this is likely, I don't know if it'll happen before you guys graduate, but it's something we've been looking at as a group and wanting to work at kind of making some changes as we are changing nursing is changing, I should say, how they're evaluating students, success. So there's something being pushed, and I think we talked about this a little in foundations called competency-based education. And in there is a change in how all the different nursing programs are organizing and educating students and kind of trying to collect different data. So I anticipate this will change in the next couple of years. Whether it's before you leave, I can't tell you that. But let's look at one of these forms here. So each of these forms, if you print it in black and white, it'll make it harder. You'll just have to read really carefully. But the preceptor forms are green and the yellow is for student self-evaluation. Just an FYI, but if it's in black and white, you're not going to see that. But notice it says preceptor final eval. I will tell you it looks the same for the midterm too. It's the same questions. What I think is confusing for students is I think, we all think that we're going to be the top and the best, or should be the top or the best for each category right out of the gate. There's no way everyone's going to be there, nor should they be there. If you were at, fours all across the board, why are you in school? We all have to learn and grow. We've separated the areas of evaluation into if you will recognize the SOAP note format. That's what we're using. There's the subjective, objective, assessment, plan, and then we do a one for professionalism. Okay. You might get a four in professionalism right away. That's great. I would hope so, right? I'd hope you be on the higher end with there, but I don't expect you to get all of these other pieces, and nor should you. And if you go to the second page, you'll see that, and again, this may seem low, and this is where we're kind of reevaluating this. But in your first course, which is, and again, this hasn't been totally changed to reflect the way we've reorganized the courses, but N544 is the one you'll take in the fall. We want you to be at least a five from the preceptor's evaluation by the end of the semester. That's not a hard thing to meet, right? That's like, if you were, you could even get a zero in a couple areas. I wouldn't want you to, but you could. But I think by the end of that first rotation, you should be pretty good at taking a history and evaluating your patient. So objective is actually your physical assessment, and assessment is actually your diagnosis, right? You probably aren't going to be super high in the diagnosis area. You at least you won't feel that you are probably, even if you are doing okay, just because it's a new process. That's not what you've done before as a nurse. Whereas an advanced practice nurse, that is what you'll be doing. And then the plan. So those two take a little bit more time. So I don't expect you to get high rankings in that. Um, but it will increase as you go through. So just know that we don't expect you to come out of the gate, ready to be a single practicing nurse practitioner. That's just not the way it rolls. Your second course is going to be N540, which is listed as your third because we've reorganized the orders. So just know that it's your second course that we expect to get at least an 8, which would be in the spring. And then fall of your third year is when you take Women's Health or N542, and that's where we'd want the 10. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I know Gretchen said you could get a zero, but if you read this form closely, you absolutely cannot. So you need to at least be at the one. That's why that is in red. And so again, if a preceptor sees that they feel like that's where you're at, they are to be contacting for you guys. It would be Katie here in the fall. So again, to pass, you need to be at least at that minimum level of proficiency up above, and it's very clear as to what that is. So again, if by midterm or something you would be meeting with your preceptor and he or she is saying, whoa, you got to work on this, you still have some time to make that course correction. But again, just to point that out, of
Yeah.
you need to at least be in the ones column.
Yeah. And I very rarely have people ever hitting zeros by the time they're getting midterm evaluations. In the beginning, you're going to feel like you are, right? And that's normal. But by the midterm, students are still doing much better. So I find that most students are, at 2 or 3 by their first rotation, depending on the area, right? The one is the areas of sometimes the plan and sometimes the diagnosis or assessment. Okay. So just to kind of give you an idea, but yes, in yes, they could give you a zero. We don't want you to be in a zero, but we're going to notice it when we come to do your assessment. And when we come, you should expect us to be observing you do a patient interaction, and we will want to observe that. Okay. So you and the person who's been assigned to come out and do your site visit will, be in connection about when that is, but know that that's the goal. Sometimes life doesn't happen the way we want it to, and we have no shows and things like that. So it doesn't happen every time, but that's the goal of those site visits, for us to come meet with you, to meet with your preceptor, to see you in a patient interaction. Okay. Make sense? Okay. So my mouse is acting weird because I think I have my other computer open, so it gets confused. So we've talked about the verification forms, the preceptor, midterm and final, and your self-eval midterm and final. The last 2 forms that you will need to hand in at the end of each semester to be able to have sufficiently, completed the course. We need to get an evaluation of the preceptor from your point of view, an evaluation of the site. So meaning, say, you were working with me and I was at Maple City, I would expect you to have an evaluation of how I did as a preceptor, but also how was Maple City in welcoming you into the setting. So those 2 things really are important to us as a program, because we want to make sure we're putting you in a location that is you're getting a good learning experience. And again, I don't want you to wait till the end to tell me that was terrible. If things are struggling, we want to know earlier because we want to get you out. And there are some preceptors that we do not work with anymore because we just didn't feel like our students were getting a good learning experience. It doesn't mean they're bad preceptor or they're bad people or bad providers, but they're maybe not great at teaching. So it doesn't always equate to the type of provider they are, just that they maybe didn't do as good with precepting, or they kept trying to have the students try to do more than they were supposed to be doing. Okay. So, yeah, that's that. Questions about any of those forms in there? How are we on time? Good. So I am not going to spend the whole time going through the handbook, but I am going to emphasize a couple of important things, and I'll bring it up here. Um, but let's see if I can do this, if this works. Every once in a while. Yay. Okay. So I will try to have what's up here match with what I'm looking at down here. We are in the process, as we do every academic year, usually in the summertime. We are updating our handbook, and then we will put the new handbook up. Okay. So one of the things that will be added, and I won't be able to show you on the screen, is I want you to feel comfortable giving a quick synopsis when you go in and evaluate a patient, get a quick history, and are doing an assessment, that you can bring together that information in a concise, quick report to your provider that you're working with. So it's kind of equates to the sidebar or the S bar, that we give when we're reporting off to another nurse, at the end of a maybe your your clinical day. But this is a little bit different, and so I'm going to include that in there, and that'll be something that Katie will talk to you more about, and we'll work more with you at the clinical site. But that's going to be added into this handbook. It's not there right now. But what you can see are starting on page 21 of the handbook, you can see what's required for you to get done before you start the clinicals. And we kind of talked through that. The VCI nicely lays it out where you need to put in, your CPR have to be current. You sign a HIPAA form, which is the confidentiality form. We need to know you have insurance. We need to get that verification of health, do the background check, and then proof of your immunizations. Okay. So I will let you read through those. Again, I emphasize the importance of, keeping up to date, and as a healthcare provider, practicing what we preach and getting these immunizations. But at the same time, we do know there are unique situations. And so definitely talk to us if that includes you. Okay. So here's the thing about, I was talking to you about the 750 hours. If you forget, it's in the handbook. You don't have to always remember everything, but it is in there. Okay. And I'm realizing I think the handbook that I might be looking at might be different than the one in here. So at the end of the semester, we need to collect all those documents that we just went over in a timely fashion. And at the beginning of the semester, we'll tell you when that date is. That's part of uh, the syllabus. The professor should put in there when the forms are due. A lot of times we organize it so that you have like a set time to drop things off, and we can meet with you for a few minutes just to make sure all your things are signed off. Or it's the last day of the class and you're taking an exam and you hand them in, and the professor can look through them while you're doing the exam or something like that. But if you are late, over 24 hours late in getting those forms in on time, we have the right to deduct for that. Again, I haven't had a problem with this. There's a couple of students in the course of the time that I've worked here that we've had to work more with, but just know, no one wants to take off from your course grade. So just hand your papers in. It's on time. It's pretty straightforward. When you hand your information in, your professor should ask you, does the amount of hours, and that's the patient hours, those are the only hours that count in the system. And I'll show you, there's something called, um, it's like a preceptor hours or something like that. That doesn't matter. You don't even have to enter anything there. If you're talking about a patient case with your preceptor, that's patient care hours. I don't want you even including, other consultation stuff in there. That doesn't count. But those patient care hours should match pretty closely. They could be off by a little bit because sometimes the rounding is different in one system to the next, but they should be pretty close to what you've had each preceptor sign off when you're with them each day. Does that make sense? So that you want those two things to meet. Um, and so we'll ask you that, and we'll make sure that that matches when we kind of go through things and review them at the end of the semester. And again, if it's what the patient care hours are stating. Okay. Your preceptors, as I've talked to many of you when we've met one-on-one, which I've sincerely appreciated, We want you to have a good experience, and so we're trying to match you with preceptors that have experience. Most of the time, I find that a nurse practitioner, especially, is not going to feel ready to really be a preceptor till he or she has had about 2 years under their belt. We'll accept a year, but we I feel that that first year of practice is really like your residency. And so then it's that second year that you feel really confident and get really good and know how you want to organize yourself and are ready to maybe be more of a preceptor. So again, working with us one-on-one, but we try to not have you be with people under 2 years. I have had some students be with people under that and done okay. So again, it's not a hard stop, but a minimum of 1 year. Okay. As much as possible, we try to have you with nurse practitioners. There may be times you may have a PA for part of your, clinical experience or an MD, and that's fine. But we'd like at least 2 of those 4 semesters to be with nurse practitioners. Preferably one of those should be that first semester. I just think it helps for you to get used to what your role is. This is a new role for you, and to work with someone who is in that role. Whereas sometimes when you're with physicians, they tend to have you do more of the assisting of what they're doing, and that's not what we want you to do. You're an independent practitioner that needs to function as so. So I find students do better when we can get you in with nurse practitioners. We talked a little bit about the 4 semesters, but what I want to tell you is that this clinical thing that I'm going to show you here doesn't match what we're going to be updating. And so I wanted to go over this with you, and know that this will be changed in the handbook for the new academic year. So if you take 750 hours and you divide it by 4 semesters, that breaks down to 188 hours per semester. Okay. What we discussed and been kind of following as a program have noted that students in that first semester that you're about to go in, that's a lot. It's a lot of transition. You're learning to function in a new role, and you're balancing usually family life and school and clinical hours, and it's a lot. So what we've decided is that if you, and this will reflect it, doesn't reflect it yet, but you will have the option of doing as little as 120 hours in that first semester. So if, things just don't, you need a little more time and you need some, time to kind of transition into this role as a student MP, we want to give that to you. Um, it doesn't have to be that. We'll still allow you to do up to 188, but just know at the end, you still have to hit the 750. So if you do 120 in the first semester, then the next 3 semesters of clinical, which are going to be spring and then fall and spring of your third year, need to be about 210 hours. Does that make sense? Because at the end, still has to be 750. Okay. So I'm not saying that that's going to be you and you'll only want to do that bare minimum, but just know that you have that option. Are there questions or comments? Because that's a change that we just recently discussed at our last MSN subcommittee meeting.
And I know you guys from talking with Katie that, again, just to have this on your radar, your all day skills day is October the 6th. And so, again, as she works with you, like if you guys have placements and stuff, great. We're not saying wait till October 6th. You can get started before that. But I know that Katie strongly believes like having done that skills day puts some tools in your pocket that maybe just expands your practice. So I'm not saying wait on that, but if you're a person that struggles to get a placement or something, this gives us a little bit of grace too that we don't have to push that you get those 188 hours. If you get a late start in getting a preceptor, then maybe the 120 is going to be a way more reasonable goal. So again, a lot of things are going to contribute to this, but just a shout out for that skills day of, I know that's a really important day for Katie to feel like you guys, again, you are not just doing skills. There's a lot more that you're going to do beyond suturing and biopsying and all that. But I know that's sort of a day that she has earmarked that's going to put some skills in your pockets.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, ask away.
Maybe I missed this part, but okay, so I understand the total that I need to graduate as far as clinical patient hours.
Mm-hmm.
Am I like, is there a requirement per semester that I'm like trying to get to as far as like to be able to move on? I need to have 188 hours the first semester to
Yeah.
continue on.
So usually it is that 188 plus or minus 10%. We usually that's how we've done it in the past. What's
Okay.
different is that we're giving students a minimum of 120 that first semester if they'd like to. Or if it happens to work out that way for different reasons. But the rest of them, then you would need to hit that about, 210 to keep moving on. By the time you get into your beginning of your third year, if we follow the minimums, we want you to be at least 330. Most students are going to be well beyond that, but
Okay.
okay. Your professor will should be updating the syllabus to reflect that. Okay, but good question.
Well, Gretchen, I already asked you this via email, but for everybody else, I didn't get a Goshen or a Beacon
Yep.
placement. So what's up? What's next?
Yeah, so I didn't know if we would talk about it here, if we would talk about it later, but yes, we are very much aware that the placement process has been a little bit muddier than we had hoped for the fall semester. So I and Jewel and I just met yesterday. We were kind of going over things and talking about some strategy moving forward. As you all know, I'll be kind of stepping away, but I am reaching out and trying to plant some seeds with some other people in the community that I know have helped out in the past that maybe have not been tapped on. I think the number one problem right now is that health systems don't make it as easy for the preceptors they're asking to know who their student might be ahead of time. And so they're blankly saying no, but then when they either get a recommendation from you or by meeting you or by someone else saying, hey, I know a student who's coming up and through, and I think that, this person would be really a great student to work with. Then they're saying yes. But it often sometimes takes some groundwork. And the first semester is always the hardest because just like you guys are all experienced nurses, you don't always want to precept a brand new spanking new nurse, right? Who's just, starting her education or his education. Um, it sometimes takes more time. And our health systems don't allow us to always slow down and do what we want to do to do that well. And so I think that's where we're here getting some pushback. But yeah, we are working to try to help you figure that out. And I have reached out to Jessica Fowler over at Goshen for a couple different things, and I haven't heard back from her yet. I also reached out to Rachel, who's kind of the one that's heading over this APC committee, which is for advanced practice providers in the Beacon system. And again, it's new. And so I think they're going through some growing pains right now. And the way they've asked to get the preceptors hasn't really helped. I know they've prioritized their employees. And so if they as they get applications in, if you are a non-employee, you get moved down really quick, unfortunately. And Goshen, I think, is going through a lot of changes too, with moving forward with exploring the new ownership or shared governance with the Parkview system. So there's a lot of changes going on. So I'm sensing some hesitation in providers there too, because we usually, if we have enough preceptors, we've had a much better number of students being able to be in the health system, the Goshen health system, that we did not get this time. So don't give up. But I would also say, don't also put it all on Goshen College to be the one to look. Keep talking to your preceptors that you think you might want to work with. Reach out to people who are nurse practitioners who have had a good, preceptor in the past and say, do you think that they would be open to taking another student? And if, they could maybe start the conversation, then maybe you reach out to that preceptor. Again, it is sometimes a case by case basis. Parkview has been the least resist or has been the most resistant to that. So I don't think many of you are in that area. But before you would approach a Parkview provider, reach out to Jewel so that she can help guide you, or Katie or Dina. But I haven't seen any negative responses when we've at least asked providers. They get it. And our students
So
are usually doing like received better because they're better prepared. Where some of this times, if they're getting online students, they don't the preceptors don't like that.
So I know a lot of nurse practitioners, several at Beacon and some at Goshen, and the response I've gotten from them, well, one of them recommended that I reach out to you. I was like, well, she's my professor.
That's
But
super
the other,
sweet.
I know, but they said to me it has to go through the Goshen or Beacon clinical
Yes.
overarching thing, so they said I can't just be your preceptor.
No, but what you can do, and this is what the systems are set up to do. If you know that someone has said yes, like I think Emma, you knew your provider, correct? Um, and then you gave that name when you filled out the forms. Am I correct in that?
Me? Yeah. Oh,
So
Emma.
yeah. So what we need to do is like so one of the people is your professor, Katie. She has offered to take a student. And when they sent the information out asking for preceptors in the Beacon system, she said, "Yes, I'd like to take a Goshen student." They did not assign a student to her. We don't know why that didn't happen. We're going to work and trying to make that happen. So I'm gonna, look over things. I've, reached out, and I'm also waiting to hear back from a few other people as to if they'll be able to take a student. And then we try to do the best we can to match preceptors and students based on a couple different factors. If the provider is a Spanish speaking provider, of course, I'd like to have a Spanish speaking student with them because they'll get more out of it. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and it has progressively gotten a little more challenging for us as a organization as well. So we're working through it, and but what I see happening is if a preceptor says yes to you, then you're contacting that organizations who, if it's Jessica Fowler for Goshen, it's Rachel. I know it's not Knaufel, but that's how it looks like, or something like that, or the admin person working with her, and they will then reach out to the preceptor who has said yes to you to verify that does that preceptor really want to take a student. And once they get that, then they go through the process and they'll tell you what else they need. Does that
And
make
Okay, so
guys,
then
I'm new
the,
to this area too. And so like Gretchen was saying that some students have actually had like really good placements at like an RV manufacturer. Some of those places have their own clinical like sites because they have thousands and thousands of employees and stuff. And so again, think outside of the box of, what are some of these standalone offices too that are not necessarily a part of a big health system. If I was in your shoes, I would be like, here is a cover letter of who I am. Here is my resume. I am a Goshen College student. I am in their 19th, cohort of doing this. And literally what Gretchen has said to me is sometimes it does take the like pounding the pavement of you guys going out and introducing yourself and being like, I'm going to leave this behind. It's got my contact information. If your provider would be willing to have me as a student, I'm happy to do your process. But it's going to be unfair to ask Callie if she's the new person to do all of these placements. Like it's just not going to happen if I'm honest with you. So I really am going to lean into you guys if you are going to have to do more legwork than just throwing your hands up and just saying, well, I tried these processes. Um, to get some of those placements. And again, that spreadsheet that Gretchen shared with you, anybody that you're working with on there, be putting those down because I'm trying to help manage your group and the group above you. When I talked to them last night, I said, whatever names you guys put down, I'm going to try not to like pilfer their names for you guys. But when the semester starts, if they have names of people they were working with that like they had 3 people on their name and they picked the first one, well, then maybe there's 2 more people that I can reach back out to or put you in touch with. If they said they would take this student, you see if they'll take you. So again, we're managing your group plus the group in front of you. So how many are in that class, Gretchen? That one looked kind of big too. 12-ish?
We
Or am
have
I
10 in that group.
10
So
there? And
there
then
we
the
so
12
total
of
we would
you.
have like 23 students.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is it keeps us busy, right? And um the other thing I will point out is specifically I haven't been able to get breakthrough, but Sarah, you work in Notre Dame. They have an employee wellness center.
Mhm.
I
Have you gotten
already
anywhere with that?
asked.
I tried too.
They
So I
said,
thought
so
maybe
they
they
told me it's like this is the biggest headache I have at Notre Dame. They told me, especially because I'm a employee, no.
what
And
about
I was
their
like,
student wellness center?
I'll check in with them because I'm close to them, but I had a very hard time just getting student nurses from the St. Mary's program allowed to work with me in my program in first
Mhm.
aid. So
Yeah.
it's annoying.
This is a headache because we know statistically that nurse practitioners stay in the communities with which they train, and yet we seem to be hitting more and more roadblocks to getting them through the clinical placement. So again, it's a not you, it's everything and everybody. We're really looking at lots of different avenues to explore.
Right.
So,
That's
which
an
I
is
do,
interesting
I
idea with St. Mary's and all the other colleges like that. That's a thought too. I'm just trying to brainstorm. Anyhow, I
I
interrupted. Go
do I
ahead.
do have a question. So I have a lot of people I know that are in specialty. Like I know a nurse practitioner that's in
hmm
ENT. I have
hmm
a friend who's a Goshen Peds. I know you don't want us starting out with that. Like
hmm
how do I have a lot of doctors that are like, you can work with us. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm supposed to do FNP.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, right? This is the way we roll is that your first experience would be with a nurse practitioner. But you know what? If we can get a physician to let you, work with them, I think we might work with that. Well, where we're going to hold really firm is we want it to be with primary care, but primary care is more than you would probably suspect. Pediatrics is primary care. Women's health is primary care. We don't, I don't like that urgent care is considered primary care, but it is. I wouldn't want all your experiences to be in an urgent care, but you can have one, you know. So it is broader and not, but we don't want to put you into a specialty clinic because you're going to be tested and expected to know what's happening in from primary care. And so we want to train you as a primary care provider. And that's one of the things that has set us apart, to be quite honest, from a lot of programs. Some programs will just let you go into whatever. We give you the option to petition to be in a specialty area at the last semester, but we don't want you in there, the specialty clinics the whole way through, because we're not doing our job to get you trained as a primary care provider, which is, and I'll be biased, I really think is the shortcoming of the healthcare system in America right now. We need primary care.
So
Gretchen, will you
Gretchen,
also
since
talk a
we're
little bit about the incomplete process? Not that I want to plant that seed, but just
hmm
there
hmm
definitely is going to be concern of like, oh, how does
hmm
this work and stuff. So talk a little bit about sort of the rolling nature a little bit of the hours.
Yeah, I was trying to finding, I wanted to kind of, yeah, that I don't have it in front of me, and it's in the handbook as well, but let's talk about it. So as we said, the goal and the hard stop for the first semester is 120 hours. So you're not fully completed that course until you've completed the 120 hours and the didactic work. They go together, right? But what we could do, and again, we haven't had to do this on a large scale at all. But if we had several students who we couldn't get placed until later in the semester, and they're not able to get the 120 hours by the end of the semester, we would not hold you back. you would continue to do your didactic work. You would get an incomplete for the course until you hit the 120 hours, and then your hours would count towards the next semester. Does that make sense? But your didactic work would continue the whole way through. Okay. Unless, of course, there's a skill issue, there's a knowledge base issue that we're worried about. But if our placement issue is the only thing, there's only been one semester that we had to do that to two students. And part of the issue was we really advocated and gave them great contacts and the students didn't follow through. So, that was on them to mostly. They finished on time. They got it. Okay. We don't have clinicals per se in the summer. We are probably going to need to look at that again. And maybe we're going to need to start putting some of our students in the summer because there's not as many students doing rotations in the summer, so we can usually get placements easier. And I have a student from the other class who she forgot that we didn't have clinicals in the summer. So she put in to do clinicals and she got a placement. And we initially said, no, no, no. And now we're like, ooh, maybe we should go back and we're trying to see if we can get her in the summer. So that's one less person for the fall, right? So there's more than one way to do things. Okay. So don't panic.
Gretchen.
Yeah.
So for like me and Sarah, at least that's what I know, that Beacon and Goshen said no.
Hmm.
And we do have specialty providers. Will those hours count then, since that's all the placement that it's looking like we're going to get?
No, you will not be able to do the placements in the primary. You have to do primary care. You can't do specialty.
So those hours wouldn't count.
No,
Okay.
not at this point. We're going to get you something. It's just going to take a little bit of work. Okay. Again, I'm tweaking and reaching out to graduates, and we're doing some things to try to get some people um, tapped who maybe weren't tapped the normal way.
The only time in which you can even consider getting a specialty placement is in your final semester. Final semester. So that is your fourth rotation, and we have a whole petition process that you have to do. And even at that point, it is typically only about half your hours, unless you are really having a clear case for us as to, we've had some that are like, I am going into ortho, or I can't remember, there's another one that maybe was derm or something. If you have a job lined up in which that is the area you're going to go into, then we are perhaps more swayed towards that. But again, to Gretchen's point, you guys are in a FNP program, and that is the certification and testing that you will be doing. So, not saying no, just saying no until that last semester. So, yeah, we gotta keep working on this. And Gretchen's got some insider things, and I think that Katie and Dina can help us. But yeah, I'm open to any suggestions at this point. Um, you had even said that it's not like the CVS Minute Clinic. We don't super love them, you guys. They really are not having to do a lot of critical kind of judgment things. Theirs is a lot of algorithms. I joke that I could probably be an FNP there because it's like, do they have a fever? Could it be this? Like it doesn't require really a certificate or certification probably for that. So we're going to sway away from some of those too. But there was one we were talking about, Gretchen. You said it's hard to get in and there's a whole application. Do you remember even what that one was?
Hmm. Off the
I
top
don't
of my
remember
head,
what
I
the
can't.
clinic was that we were talking about. It was
Yeah, I
something,
mean,
it wasn't
FQHCs
super
are the same.
familiar.
Oh, probably HealthLink. HealthLink.
Health Link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do a great job. They have several branches throughout St. Joseph County. And but the key is they've changed who's helping from the inside. So I still always say talk to a preceptor. And once you get the approval, because what the person who does helps with placements within their system, which is spread between Valparaiso and St. Joe County, they will simply ask. And so the preceptor is the number one person that we need to get on board before we can get you placed. So if we have a preceptor that's saying yes, then we can help navigate it. And then they have an online form that you need to fill out. So does Maple City. Same thing holds though. I have trouble getting students in there because they're bringing on new nurse practitioners. And so your experienced nurse practitioners are often burned out because they're doing all the new nurse practitioner orientations. But we're trying. I haven't given up. There's always the option of coming to Oregon. Just kidding. I'm not telling you, pulling you away.
Now we're doing virtual preceptoring all
That's
the way to
right.
Oregon or a residency where you take one student every 7 weeks.
There you go. Come out and experience all that Grants Pass has to offer.
Shoot.
I want to highlight just here, if you see on the screen that I'm sharing, I did just highlight this section that went over what we already talked about here. And that is that you will need to complete, this may seem weird, but 125 hours of women's health, a minimum of 125 in pediatrics, and a minimum of 300 in adult. Why would we say that? Because sometimes you're doing specialty at the end. That's why we say that. But I will tell you, if you are really trying to petition for a whole semester of primary or other than primary care, your final semester, we want you to have at the minimum 600 going into that. So there, if that's your goal, then try to get more hours in the front end. Does that make sense? Okay. Um, I'm going to really encourage you again, just because I want to give you a little break here before we go over Typhon. I want you to spend times, it's between pages 21 and 29. That's where all that clinical stuff is. Talking about general policies, knowing that you are representing us. And we also want to do a good service to the community. So we all need to work together to be in our best behavior, professional dress. Some programs that or systems that you go into will have you wear a white coat. So you want to have one, on standby. But I will tell you, I've never worn a white coat. I don't want to wear one because I think it's a barrier for me between my patients. But some offices are really set on them. In fact, the one I'm going to out in Oregon, same thing. They said, like, "Do you want a white coat? We'll get it made for you." I was like, "Don't waste your money." I said, "Unless it's required, I will not be wearing it." It's just a barrier. I try to break down those barriers so patients feel more comfortable. But it works for some offices because of that's the climate, right? Every office has a climate, and that's okay. But you do want to be careful about what you're wearing as far as it's not, I know how you guys dress when you come to class, so I'm not really thinking this is going to be an issue, but you don't want to wear strong perfumes because if someone's, sensitive to smells and has allergens, you usually want to wear professional dress. So you don't have to wear like a suit and tie. Yeah, some people do, but you don't have to. Or you don't have to wear a dress if you're as a woman, but we want you to be professional. So usually not jeans. Usually, Maple City, we sometimes do wear jeans, but that's not most places, right? It's like usually khakis or some type of clean dress pants and a relaxed but professional top as well. So this is spelled out, and so I would like you to spend some time reading that. The other big thing, and I may have gone by it yet. Nope. One thing I want to emphasize, and I'll say this again when we're going through Typhon, from the date that you do your clinicals till the date that you enter or edit any information, you got 7 days. So if you say you had a clinical experience on June 10th, June 18th, you go in there and add that, you can't. It won't let you. What we try to do, and this is what I've done in the last year, and it's worked really well. So I don't know if they'll do this going forward, but I would petition to, suggest it. I've opened up Typhon about mid-semester. So if anyone made a mistake or they forgot to go back in and edit some details of a visit, I open it up so you can go back and edit it. And then I do it again at the end of the semester. So that gives you two chances to get in there and correct something if it was edited wrong, or you didn't add all the hours right or something. Okay. So I said I'm making that suggestion, but just know that we want you to be logging them while things are fresh. And whether you print off a sheet that I'll show you, you can use to take some information from all the patients that you see throughout the day, or whether you're, entering it right there. I mean, I don't want you spending a lot of time on a personal computer, but I know some people will put it in their phone and just put the initials and some basic information and then go back and add details later. It shouldn't take you too long of a time. I like anything else, paperwork, computer work, it's the bane of our existence. This is that. But the more you put in, the more information you'll have to get out, and you'll have a printout at the end of your education to be able to show what you've done. We talked about the skills seminar. We've talked about the importance of maintaining your CPR, professional dress, wearing your ID. Jewel, do you want to put this on your note of asking Lisa to get the student IDs with the pictures they've already had? And we usually just print their first initial and their last name, and that says student NP. So that way, unless you want your first name, or your last name on there, if you want just your first name, let us know because with that we can have it printed however, but we usually keep it pretty basic. When you're signing anything, if you're signing any forms, make sure your signature alone isn't going to usually be enough. It'll has to have to be slashed with your preceptors, but you would sign it as usually the first initial, your last name, and FNP student. Okay, or you can write your whole name out. I will let you know, just so that we'll talk about this, I'm sure, more in your transition course, but there are two certifying bodies, and that's what was being talked about a little bit up here. One is the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners, and their certifying body is certification program. Most of us just call it AAMP. And then there's the American Nurses Credentialing Center. If a nurse practitioner that you're working with is credentialed through them, they might say their name and FNP-BC, which means board certified. AAMP has had different ways to write it over the years, but I am certified through AAMP. Does one matter? No. In the end, we're all doing the same thing. But when those nurse practitioners sign, they can do NP-C, which means a nurse practitioner certified, or they can do FNP-C, which means certified nurse practitioner. Does it matter? In the end, no. But I want you to know what those things stand for. Okay. Uh, Let me see. I think we're almost done with this, and then we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back and go over some typhon stuff. Yeah, I think those are the big things. Questions that you have. I'm gonna stop sharing here. Anything.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Yeah. Go Zena.
So, I'm planning to do mine at Maple City. So, how many clinical rotations, or I should say semesters, can I do at Maple City?
So that's one thing I didn't emphasize in there, but it is in the handbook. I don't want you doing more than two rotations with one place. And the reason being is not because there aren't great people and a lot of great things to learn at any given location, but because this is your chance to expand and learn from different people and see how different people organize themselves. And so hopefully at the end of your 4 semesters, you've seen some things you like from each semester of preceptors you've worked with, and you get to help shape who you want to be and how you want to practice. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? And I am glad to hear that. Do you mind if I ask who's agreed to take you?
So, I had spoken to a couple because I didn't hear back from
Uh-huh.
any of the big organizations. I've spoken with Heather,
Okay, good.
and she usually likes to take
Our
students.
students. Okay,
So,
good. I thought you were going to tell me Cipriana. I haven't been able to convince her.
so Cipriana is also another one that agreed, and
Oh,
since
good,
she
good.
has some things going on in December.
Mhm.
Heather will be my preceptor in December,
Okay.
if
Well,
that makes sense.
we end the second week of December. So we usually suggest that students try to aim to be done by that first week of December, and that way so you have plenty of time to hand your paperwork in and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. But that's great. And that's
Mhm.
perfect. I was hoping that you were going to say that. So see the difference? Me asking versus you asking. They know
Mhm.
you. They know who they're saying yes to. Totally different story than when I'm saying I'd like to place a student with you.
Yeah, no,
Just
it took a while to convince Cipriana, and then once she heard that Beacon and Goshen declined, she's like, actually, I'll just take you, but don't tell Gretchen.
I tried with her too. I'm
Yeah,
so
she did
glad because
mention that too.
she's an excellent provider. So I'm super glad. Super
She's
glad.
just said that she's really worried about teaching. She's like,
Yeah.
it's something new and stuff. And I was like, you do it all the time. She always pulls me into rooms. So I was like, you already do it anyway.
Yes.
Finally agreed.
Oh, well, it's good. I think that would be great if you could spend time with both of them.
Yeah.
So maybe just filling out two separate forms.
Correct.
That
Yeah.
might make life a little easier for the
Mhm.
tallying and all that source.
Yeah.
And so sometimes too, we're going to get into this in a second here, but you you will have a preceptor that maybe we've worked with that place before, but we haven't worked with that preceptor, so we don't have them in our Typhon system. We just need to add them. And so that's why it's so important for us to get names and stuff because it takes some time for us on the back end to get everything added.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I
good.
haven't heard back from HR. I think they will be reaching out to you because I
I'm
had to
sure
put
they
your name
will.
into the application.
Yeah, if it's not me, it can be Jewel, right? So
Okay.
I just reached out to them about another student who's going to be with Leah, and same thing. I said, you know, in my absence, Jewel could fill that information out too.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard from them, so I'm just like, I don't know if I should say I have a placement yet, but
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
the
So
providers
that's
are okay
where
with it.
putting their name and putting a question mark, that at least
Mhm.
lets us know that you're working with them and you're trying to see where this goes.
Sure. Okay.
Good. Okay, guys, why don't we take like a break to about five till? So that gives us about like 7 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with Typhon.
Gretchen,
Gretchen,
can I ask you a question?
You bet.
Okay, so a couple of us are asking if we practice in Michigan, we have to have a Michigan license. Is that
Was that
correct?
you who sent the question in?
No, no, we're
Okay.
doing a group chat.
Yes.
But I thought
No,
I'd
I
ask
just
you.
saw that chat come up. And yes, whatever state you're in doing clinicals, you have to have a license for that state. And we only work with Indiana and Michigan.
How long is the application process for a Michigan license if we needed to apply for that?
I had a student, every state's different and it can change, right? Poor Noman can tell you about trying to transfer his license from Chicago or from Illinois to here. And I think he's holding it in both places. And for some reason, it took him a little longer than I would have expected. But
Yeah.
most of the time, it's less than 30 days.
Because I think neither Michigan or Illinois have a compact or are part
Yeah,
of the compact.
a lot of states right around us don't. But I will say it just has to do. Sometimes you have to fill it out, and as Noman will tell you, call and bug the State Board of Nursing and get them to process it. But I had students last year who had Indiana licenses and wanted to do a rotation with the federally qualified healthcare center called Covered Bridge up in Michigan, and they ended up getting licenses for Michigan, and it took less than 30 days.
Okay.
But I can't promise that always, right?
I'm just thinking in the future if that could open up additional possibilities, maybe
Yes.
because like I'm in Northern Granger. I'm literally my neighborhood is my backyard is Michigan. So
Yep. Yep. No, I had another student this semester who I think was assigned, given an opportunity to work with a beacon provider up in Michigan now that they've really expanded up into Michigan. And unfortunately would have to get a new license, right? So that was but luckily we had found another one here in Indiana. So it wasn't as an issue, but to be honest, I would highly promote it, having it both states. It just gives you a wider opportunity. So good
Gretchen, I had a
question.
question.
Yep.
Since it seems like through Beacon, they want us to provide them with a few names for them to contact. Do you guys have a list of maybe previous students that are now FNPs or people that would be a resource to us?
So that could be something that we could try to do. We have it in the past. Because again, and I apologize, I don't know if you hear all the noise going on. My dogs are like losing their crap because my husband just came home. Um, we could potentially, share something if we get the student's permission to be a preceptor, so that you can reach out. I will put another plug in, another resource. Hold on one second. I will put another plug in for being part of CAPNY because they also have a list of providers that have agreed to be preceptors, but you have to be a member of CAPNY. So it doesn't matter if you are based in Michigan, you can still be a part of the Coalition for Advanced Practice Nurses in Indiana. So it's still worth a shot. And I don't know that Michigan has that resource to my knowledge. I haven't had any student have that. So it's hard for me to say about that one, but that your professional organizations are definitely another resource. But what I'm going to show you today is anybody who's ever worked with our students, it's in the system called Typhon. I sent you today. It's fine as long as they lay. I'm sorry, my husband's down here trying to get the dogs out of the room. I sent you what is called like a slap. You should have each gotten it's just an email that gives you your sign-in information for the Typhon system. It should have come through to your email today because I did them all. I made sure they were all finished today. So did you get an email? And Jewel, I even sent you one too, just so that you could get in.
I did.
Perfect. So once you get that, it gives you like a generic thing to sign in, and then you can change your password. Okay. But that's how you're going to access the system I'm going to show you. And it's okay if you can't get in right now. I'd rather you pay attention to what I'm going to show you and then just know that this exists and you can play with it and ask us questions. Okay. And the good news is I'm not making you watch the whole 71-minute video, which is an education video they have in the system. It is there for you, but I'm going to show you how if you want to like zero in on one particular thing you're struggling with, you can pick. You don't have to listen to all the whole thing again. But let me pop on over and share my screen again here. La, 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 la. Okay. So when you sign into Typhon, you won't have some of the stuff. I'm signed it as a pretend student right now. And you'll see, Jewel, you have now been made the administrator. I made you officially today the administrator. Woohoo, right? And we can talk more about that. But I wanted to just make you aware of what you'll see is mostly these main things, and you won't have these red flags unless you don't finish filling in information on a case that you started. It'll help remind you that you need to do that. Okay. But when you sign into this, you'll see this, and what each time you're entering a patient, it's called a case log. So that's what you're going to create each time. Okay. So you'll add a new case log, and I'll walk you through that here. But before I do that, I want to just make you aware of something over here under information and setup. There are different ways to just do searches for all the different clinical sites. You can just print that or click that, and you can get a list of all the places that we've ever worked with. That might be overwhelming, but you can do it that way. But if you want to know if a preceptor's been with us before, you can check that. Now, if the person who was in the as the administrator at the time that we had a preceptor that we really didn't like how things went, we can hide that preceptor. So there is a case that could happen. But the other thing is we can also add preceptors, right? And sometimes people will be at one clinical site and then they'll change to another during the course of their career. And so we may have them linked to the wrong clinical site, but the preceptor was worked with us before too. Okay. So just know that there's little nuances like that. But this is a way that you can certainly do a search and see who we've worked with. Okay. The other thing I want to point out to you here is the video tutorials. Again, this is the general one, and it's how to go through a whole bunch of stuff. But if you're just forgetting, oh gosh, how do I start a new case log again? Just click that and then hit the play from there, and they'll go through some stuff with you. And this is a video. Okay. Same thing if you've entered their beginning information, but you want to remember how to go back and do edits. Now, there could be some nuances of what I've put in for some of the information that we're collecting that is different than what they're showing you in the video. That's okay. Just know that it'll still guide you. Okay. And if in doubt, I'm going to come back out of this. At least I'll try. If in doubt, you can always reach out to the help information. Okay, and do like support tickets and things like that. I will tell you, remember I said earlier that you might want to have something that you record all of your student information on or your patient information on so that you can enter your stuff later. If that's how you want to work, which I would tell you, I don't think the majority do it that way. I think the majority try to add a little bit of information as they go throughout their day so that they're just then going in and editing it at the end of the day. That is fine. But if you want a blank sheet or you want to start creating a little, like a binder and you want information, these are blank worksheets that you can print out. You can export them, you can just print them, you can do however you want to do. Okay. And so then you'd want one of these for each patient you see. That's how that would be worked. Or you could, create again some kind of cheat sheet. Make sense? Have I lost anyone yet? Okay. So now let's go back to the case log. So if you're entering a new case, the first thing you'll do is you'll enter the day of which you did it. And remember, that has to be within the 7 days from the date you're doing it. So today's the 17th. So I can go back as far as the 10th and add something in. But if I want to try to do something from the 9th, it'll say, nope, can't do it. So you'll be able to see, right? What days are active. So if I try to choose the 9th, it won't let me. I can choose the 10th on. Okay. And then we'll just click continue, and we're just using a practice one. Okay. Um, if you are doing, and I have to remember, I have to play with it because I'm not on your side very often. I'm on the other side. But there is a way, if you are like for the semester, you're with one particular preceptor, I think it's going to pull up the preceptor that you were with the last time. It's assuming that's who it is. So if you're with two people during a rotation, just know that you'll have to change. But any preceptor that's in here, you can just go in and start typing their name. So I'm assuming I'm in here somewhere because I've had students in the past. So goes in there like that. That's it. And so then whenever was your last one, that's what it'll do. Your first rotation is always going to be 544, but next semester, your rotation will be 540. So you'll need to make sure you switch it, and you'll also need to make sure you switch to the spring semester. Make sense? As well as your site. I'm not too harped on if this is a rural visit or underserved population. I would say probably, oh gosh, 70% of our patient population is. But at one point, I think that was a real focus. So if you want to, it's fine. If you want to keep track of that for your own purposes, anything you mark, you'll be able to get a graphical printout of at the end of the program or the end of the semester. So I'll show you what that looks like too. Okay. I don't think you'll ever need to worry about group encounters unless you are. So say you end up doing a rotation like for you, Zainab, if you would happen to go and do Maple City and they're doing a prenatal class, you could click group encounter. But most of the time, you're going to be in just a single patient encounter. Okay. You just want the age of the patient. I'm not, if you do a prenatal visit, you can check that. A lot of you probably will not, but if you do, that's great. More likely, what I want you as a family nurse practitioner to be able to do is be able to care for a person that is pregnant, but you're not necessarily caring for the pregnancy. Does that make sense? So they might come to you and they are pregnant, but they're coming to you for an acute issue of, upper respiratory infection or something. So just know that's why we're marking it. You're going to fill out anything that has a red means I need you to fill that out. Okay, it's an incomplete entry. It's if it's not. And again, you can put some of the stuff and then go back at the end of the day and then go in and put the more details if you want. Okay. I don't care really what their insurance is, so I don't mark that. But just getting some basic demographics. And then clinical information. And you may know some of this at the time, you may not know any of it. By the time you're just going into the room. So don't worry about filling it out. I would more likely have just like a place you can kind of jot some stuff down and then add what's the important stuff you want to get out of that. So I want to know, how long, and again, I'm going to give you hold on that thought. I'm going to give you a tip on how we fill that out. Student participation is, do you feel like in the beginning, you're probably going to do more of an observation, but as you go through your education, I want to see that most of your visits are shared and moving on to you're doing the primary part of the visit. And the provider's just coming in, your preceptor's coming in at the end. Okay. Reason for a visit, and it can be basic. Is it an acute visit, like an episodic visit? Is it a well visit? Is it a new patient or is it follow-up? Like, again, we're putting it basic. And the chief complaint, it can be, I have a headache. And sometimes the chief complaint is not actually what they're there really for. So just know that it does change. You'll see that as you get to be on the other side of it. But and then type of HMP. This is just helpful for you, and you'll talk more about this. I know that Katie has introduced this to you this semester. You'll keep building on this, but are they coming with an acute problem? So like most of the time, people are not coming to tell us how well they feel. They're coming to ask us to help with something, which is a shift. I'd like to get them to the point that we're getting a lot more well visits and they're coming to, we're trying to keep them well. But if they're coming for some chronic health issues, I'd probably put it's an expanded problem, because if they have diabetes and hypertension, right? If they're coming for a cold, it might be a problem focused. And I don't know what I'd put as a detailed. I don't really have a lot. This is going to coincide down the road as you'll learn to do billing, which is not my main focus for you guys at this point, but it'll figure into that. And then comprehensive would be like a well visit. Someone's coming in for, a routine preventative health. I'd love to see a lot more of these in our long-term plan so we can do more to help educate our patients to keep them well. Um, I would tell you, I am not so worried about this. It's fine if you put them in there. If you're doing any procedures, it's fine if you enter information in. Okay. I have not made it a hard stop that you have to put the code in, but as you go through, I encourage you to be more aware of why your provider that you're working with is coding something, what they are. Usually when you are first hired, your first job will want you to teach you the way they want to teach you. We are going to teach you some basic stuff, but we go over it a little bit more in transitions, which is your last rotation, rather than starting with it because you can get bogged down pretty quick. Again, not as worried about this section. What I personally would do is if I were seeing a patient as a student, I would get down, this basic information will mostly be populated, get a little bit of their demographics, fill that part out. And then if you want to make notes to yourself about what the patient case was, you can make some notes here under clinical notes. I am not requiring you to put a SOAP note in for every patient you see. I find that would be overwhelming, but I do want you to practice writing SOAP notes so that every professor will usually have you handed so many SOAP notes throughout the course of the rotation. But if you're not sure which patient you're going to write a full SOAP note on, this is where I would take the notes. What were they coming for? What were their presenting symptoms? What did we do? What was my differential? Okay. There's not a red flag here for this, but I would tell you this section right here is one that's very important. So remember we talked about how many hours you each need to have with women's health and pediatrics. So when you're putting their ages in over here, it's going to filter in if they're between 0 and 17 or if they're above 18, and it'll break it down even further there. But it won't capture easily all the patients you see that are 18 to 21, which we will count as pediatric hours. So that's why if you have someone between the ages of 18 to 21, we want you to mark it here so that we can count it as pediatric hours. Okay. And then we manually have to count it later, and I'll show you how we look at it. I'll show you a report. Same with the women's health case. Ideally, this is having to deal with something that is, more specific to women. It might be a gynecological issue. It might be talking about birth control. It might be dealing with, doing a PAP. It might be presenting with, STI symptoms. That's what we mostly want to be seeing with that. But really anything that's dealing with a woman's health condition is going to be important to mark there. And so just make sure you do, because at the end of the program, I go through and look at those and make sure that you're getting all your hours. And so I had a couple students who I knew they had a lot of experience and they just hadn't marked enough of their hours and they had to go back in and edit it. It was a pain. So try to make sure you count those too right from the start. At the end of the day, and don't do this when you're seeing each patient, okay? But at the end of the day, I want you to say, okay, I was there for 8 hours that day. I saw how many patients? I'm going to use a really easy math. And so I saw 8 patients. I was there for 8 hours that day. You will put 60 minutes per patient. for all the patients you saw that day. If you saw 10 patients and you were there for 8 hours, you would take 8 and divide it by 10. Does that make sense? So and this is the hardest part and confuses people, but I don't want you to actually figure out how long you were with the patient. I just want you to divide it up, but you have to count it as time with the patient. Consult time with your preceptor, that's patient care. So don't even break that out. If you're reviewing a case, if you're doing research on a condition, if you are, seeing the patient, that's all patient care. And so while you're there, make your time purposeful. So that's why I'm saying don't individually count things, but it might look like you are spending an hour or sometimes even more with every patient, but that's just because that's how we have to count it. But again, you can't take the time you're there that you're eating lunch. So just take that out of the equation and then take that whole hour or whole time frame and divide it by the number of patients you saw. And that's your time. What's weird here, and this is why there's sometimes a discrepancy. Most of us think in quarter hours, right? Um, but it could be like 63 minutes with each patient or whatever. And so there might be slight rounding differences, but it shouldn't be off by more than probably an hour. Does that make sense?
So Gretchen, on
Mm-hmm.
average, how many patients did the students see a day?
I think students who are actually feeling like they get a lot out of their experience in the beginning when they're doing more of that, more of the just observing, like if you're talking about the type of student participation, if they're doing more in observing, they're probably observing a lot more patients. But as you start going in and being part of the actual taking the history, gathering, doing the assessment, coming back to your preceptor, giving a quick synopsis of what the patient that you saw and what you think is going on. That, I mean, some students are seeing, depending how long, again, they might see 5, 6 patients in a day. Depending how long they're there, they might see 10, 12 patients. When you're getting much above that, and it's not, I don't usually find that students do well seeing more than 10 to probably 15 at the very most. But
So if I'm
most are
trying to
seeing less.
hit, now that I'm trying to game the system here, but if I'm trying to hit my pediatric and women's health hours, if I'm seeing, if I put that I'm seeing 6 patients that day, that gives
Mhm.
me more time per patient and allocates more hours to my pediatric hours.
We're assuming you're doing about an hour per patient when we're figuring that out. So
Okay.
I want you to have it. So we're looking at cases more than anything rather than hours. Does that make
Okay.
sense? It's a good question. Okay. Questions about the system at all or how to navigate it?
So we're doing this for every patient we see, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But again, I would probably have like a notebook or something that you're quickly putting stuff in or you're starting. It depends how your workflow is. Um, and then going back in and entering stuff more after. Some students are putting it, I've had students use their phones to put stuff in. If that's easy for you, I think it would be too small, but my eyes are not what it used to be. So it depends where you're at in the lifespan here.
Gretchen,
Once you,
my new fascination with AI. Are you encouraging students to use like a dictation software that they can just quickly, I saw, patient ZG and
mhm.
she's a X-year-old woman and here's what her complaints were. I mean, do you have students that are doing that rather than typing them
I
out?
haven't come across that yet. But Open Evidence is a free resource at this time that a lot of students or a lot of NPs are starting to utilize, just healthcare
Okay.
providers in general. So that is certainly an option. You could do that for yourself and then go back and enter them at the end of the day based on that. That is something you can play with. But there I know I see new ones coming out all the time. So yeah. That sounds like that would be something you could
Thinking you
try.
guys chart enough as it is, I think the new wave of NPs is going to be much more of that dictating your reports and stuff like that. So if you guys can maybe practice that, it might
So
save you
what,
time.
yeah, so what we do, and Katie will definitely harp on this because I know she and I have talked about this multiple times. In what's happening in reality is a lot of providers are using this, ambient AI, which means it's listening, right? You have you have to have a certain template that the system is using, and then you'll click that for your note, and then it needs to listen in and it'll spit out something. Doesn't always spit it out 100% correct. You gotta read your note. And I don't have mine doing my physical assessment. It might listen if I explain something to a patient, it might include it, but then I go back and I add my details for my physical assessment. Some of the things that I find that when people use AI, that they don't always check it over, and then it's an inaccurate. Doesn't matter. You are legally tied to doing it. So if it's inaccurate, then it's going to go down inaccurate. So take the 5 minutes it takes to review it or whatever. The other thing you want to make sure you do, obviously, is you want to make sure you save it at the end. Okay. And it's going to prompt me because I didn't put much in here. I'm just going to pick an age. I should choose something like different. And it again, it's not making me has a hard stop, do all that stuff to save it. But then it's going to, when we go back to this, you see it used to be 6. Now 7 cases are missing information. So it's going to flag it as missing information until you've added everything that's needing to be entered. Does that make sense? At the end, and looks a little bit different because I'm not used to working from the student perspective, but at the end of a semester or throughout the course of your education, we encourage you to look at this. So I'm going to just put this in. Now, again, this isn't going to work probably terribly well because I don't even know what I think I have to put in. It's only going to be it for me. When I run reports, I have to put in the student name. This is SS student. So if I say, please show me all the stuff that I did, since I've been in the program, you don't even have to put dates. If you want to put a specific, what did I do for this semester, you can. And then I usually click export to a PDF and I can then save it under the student's file. But it'll show how many cases have been entered. Okay. Again, the number that I'm looking at, I want to know how many patient hours you've had. I don't care about the consult time. So please you don't even have to enter it. And then you'll see I have a breakdown of student hours here between 12 to 17 pretty easily. But unless people have been marking this down here, I won't know 18 to 21 or women's health. So it'll tally things up for you if you're marking them appropriately. Does that make sense? And don't worry, I'm trying to get, all the professors in more engaged, and they're going to be forced to this year just because I'm not there to do it for them. But they can help you. We can play through it, and I've already offered to be a resource if you need to reach out. They need to reach out to be able to help. But I would tell you watching that video can be very helpful. I don't know that I'd watch it at all 71 minutes. It's very, very dry. But at least you could have, if you wanted to remember how to get into a case log or how to run a report, it can show you that. Okay.
All right, they're going to see you train me in real time here for a second. So
Okay.
let's just take this pediatric question here. Clearly, when I look at this, it looks like the person maybe put in 1.4 hours
Mm-hmm.
with pediatrics, but then when you scroll
Mm-hmm.
this down, there was a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother hour. So
Mm-hmm.
this student, Emma, let's say, she gets credit for basically like almost 2.5 hours of pediatrics because she's saying those were
Mm-hmm.
the hours up above plus this one. Is that sort
Right.
of a clear?
Correct.
Okay. Just needed to
Correct.
make sure I knew what I was
Yep.
doing.
Yep. And
Okay.
the women's health one, again, it's that I find that one missed more than anything else that people forget to mark that. So just go through and, it's not, I can't make it a red stop because not every patient is going to fit one of these these check boxes. But I've added this as an easy way for it to tally things for you, so you're not having to go back and count how many patients you saw that were women's health.
Up above on this women's health issue, like clearly it just has age brackets. So how am I going to know for Brenda, let's say, like, do I literally need her to count that she has 250 like women's cases, that
She can
those are
run
going to
this.
be her
Yeah,
250 hours, or like how am I going to know, or Katie or Dina, like how do we know how many of these
if you want to see how many you
people
did
are
for
what?
just a semester,
Mm-hmm.
you can put a time range here. So say you wanted to see from the beginning of this semester to the end of this semester, you could put that in and then it'll just count the hours that are in that semester. But if we're wanting to see all the hours, then since they've been recording stuff, then I would just run it open like that and it'll tally where you're at that point and you can just look and see where you're at. I try to periodically send it out and just let them know where they're at. So like usually at the end of the year, and of course at the end of the program, I have to, before they go, I like, hey, this is where you're at. You need to make sure. So I usually send it at the end of the third semester so that people know where they need to focus their time to.
I guess I'm still not certain on the women's health though. Like I see here's like demographics. Is there any flow chart that tells me that these are
Mm-mm,
women's health, or a category,
right
or
here. So
just
no,
that?
just
Okay. All
that.
right.
I mean, if
So
they're really keeping track of all the times they're doing PAPs and stuff like that, you could probably do that. I have not made that as much of a, if you want to get a true, how many times have I done a biopsy? How many times have I, done cryo, or an ear lavage or anything like that? You can keep track of that. But I would tell you, we haven't reused that a lot. And we could. This has the ability to do so much. We're not beginning to use it all, but I find that students get overwhelmed. But every time you did a pelvic exam, if you're flagging it in here, that would be the other way. If you make sure you mark it under procedure and skills.
more to come on that, you guys. Once we get working with Katie and stuff in the fall, let's all just make sure that we're very clear that like
Mhm.
I'm kind of being like, let's be generous with the women's health, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, she said gyne, PAP, birth control, STI. I was adding hormones. That's probably just
Oh,
because that's on my mind.
100%. Yeah,
So
100%. So I
and
say
yeah,
anything that's doing, I mean, anytime you're dealing with a woman other than she's coming in for a cold, I
okay.
really count it. I really do count it. But it's not usually a problem as long as you're marking it. And so, yeah, but the more you mark here, the more you can capture all the stuff that you're doing in your clinical rotations. And then you could potentially print this out and actually show it to your new employer. Okay. At the end of the program, I make sure to print out the final one and I save a copy and I send a copy to the students.
Okay.
Okay. Questions, other questions? So your homework is to start playing in the system, and it has a place for you to add your license and all this stuff. I don't know that you need to do that because we keep track of that in DCI. But if you want to add that, you can. Okay. But the most important thing is that we have a case log that is accurate for the amount of patients that you've seen. Because it's this system that's we're gonna use to say you've had patient care hours X. And if you want to see, and I haven't done this from this end, so bear with me as I play with this. There is a way, case logs too long. My hours by course. So this is another quick report that you can run. And again, I'll go back. It's under other activities. And you could say my hours by course. And you click on this. And I'll just let you know, I've updated this to show that you can have as little as 120 hours in primary care one, and all the other ones will say up to 210. This particular pretend student has not taken pediatrics. So that's the only reason that's not showing. But typically that would. But again, your total achieved hours isn't what I'm looking at. It's your patient hours. And usually, if you're not using on any of those other spaces that I said don't use, your patient hours will equal your achieved hours.
One question.
Yep.
If a visit includes any type of counseling for like STDs or a contraception
Mhm.
or anything like that that would be addressed in a primary care environment, does that count
Mhm.
as a women's visit?
Does.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be like specific
You do
PAP
not have to
or
do a pelvic exam for it to be a women's health visit.
okay.
Just like men's health incorporates so much more than ever doing a rectal exam for prostate. So, yeah, no, that's fair. We
Can
just
it
want you to have as many experiences as you can.
can it only qualify in one thing? So we have to have like 125 hours in women's health and then 300 in adult. Can they, you get, if you have a patient that meets
Yeah.
both adult and women's health, it counts?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We don't really ever have to, as long as you're getting your 750 hours, you're going to have more than 300 hours. That's just a way to say a minimum before you're going into, more specialty care. So, yeah. But you're right. It's not an exclusive thing. Does anyone need me to keep sharing? If not, I'll come off of this.
So the only part we have to document is like we have to enter the cases and our hours will be calculated from there. We don't have to document anywhere else, correct?
Well, the only other thing, if you remember when I showed you that list of where you have to have your preceptor sign each time you're at clinical, that's the other place. That's the hours log, and that's under the meta course. That's the only other thing. And so at the end, we're going to ask you when you hand in your paperwork, does the hours on or do the hours on your clinical log hour sheet match what's in Typhon?
And that one row is like charted like each day.
Say it one more time. I'm so sorry, I couldn't understand.
So
Maybe.
that one row that we have in that form is filled up each day we are in the clinical, correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. So I had a student this last year. She forgot to have him sign one day. So we're trying to figure out which day it was because she has more hours in. This is not usually the way it goes. She has more hours in Typhon and less on the sheet. And I'm like, you're missing, I think, 11 hours. And so she was doing a rotation in urgent care. So she would do like a 12-hour shift. And so we're just trying to figure out where it is.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. That is all I have, guys. I know that's probably going to make your head spin a little bit, but play with it in the next, couple of weeks. As I said, I'm not technically here much more, but I am going to be, a resource to the school, and I consider you all colleagues, and I am fine with you reaching out as a friend. I am not the one making the decisions, though. That would be up to the administrative team now as I pass things over. Okay.
One more question. How soon can we do the drug screen test? How soon?
As soon as you've signed into VCI, that'll walk you through with where you're going to do it and when you're going to schedule it. And if it's outside of that 60-day window, then it'll usually, I believe, alert you to say, hey, this is beyond the day. And so then the system will be notified that it's over, and then there will be charged, and then we pass that charge to you. So as long as you do it from the 60-day window from the first time you signed in or got an extension.
I will say, Amir, like once you sign into VCI and it's going to ask you kind of like demographics, like where is your home address? And it's going to assign you to the closest drug screening place to your home. If you want, there is a search bar down in VCI. You're saying, I've got time over my lunch hour. I just want to pop to something that's close to my work or something like that. You can change the location, but it's just going to default you to what the closest one is to where it believes you live. So again, you have some flexibility as to where you go and do the drug test. You kind of click on that and they get sent all your information, and you basically show up with your ID and pee in a cup and go about your business. So it's not a long visit. It's just the pick a place and pick a day and get it done.
I would say just to be safe, and Snelly, you might be able to add into this. Sometimes they don't have as in an appointment. You sit there and wait. So just be prepared. Don't cut yourself too short. Give yourself a good hour to sit there potentially. Hopefully you're not there that long. But some
I,
places
I, rec I recently went to Any Lab Test Now, and they said that you had to have the barcode that is in the VCI thing. So just make sure you have that pulled up.
And
It's
like
So
helpful,
we have,
can we
Sarah.
go to, in regards to VCI questions, for example, when it asks you for your insurance card and you have to upload it,
Mhm.
I have TRICARE, so the military doesn't give you a TRICARE card, you just use your DoD card. So I uploaded a picture of that and it rejected it and it said I didn't put the right card up.
So would that be something we override, Jewel?
Yeah. So again, let me know, you guys, especially if you've uploaded something, and you're like, this is all I have. If you shoot me an email, I have the ability to go in and override things. Um, I will also say VCI, for being a little bit of a headache, their 1-800 number, you actually do talk to a human being. So that is oftentimes very helpful just in like problem solving. So I'm always going to direct you first to call the 1-800 number for VCI to kind of see it's not an intuitive system. Sometimes it really is picky that you've given it the information it needs. And anyhow, it's the best we have. So loop me in when you're having those issues, and I'm happy to override things.
Mhm. Good.
Annabelle, something that they rejected for me, and they sent the email, and at the bottom there was like an email address to email if you had issues. And I sent an email to that address and they fixed it for me.
Perfect. Yes, they usually are responsive. Our
Because
students have been
I
pleased
feel
for us to
like
reach out.
it does get to an actual person through the email versus just the
Like a bot,
program.
it's
Yeah.
not usually just a bot. All the terminology we're learning and with AI, huh?
Right.
so
Well, hey,
Gretchen, thank
uh,
you so much for
yeah,
doing this before you stepped
yeah,
away.
no problem.
It's a huge service to these students to have your expertise. And
Mhm,
this was a long training, you guys. It's recorded.
mhm,
We have it, which is
mhm.
fantastic. Gretchen threw a ton at you. You have
A lot.
my help a little bit. Katie's been doing this for years. Dina's been doing this for years. So again, you're in good hands as far as we will help guide you through this. You have grace with us. We're going to have grace with you. And again, we're going to come up with sort of creative ways if we need to get your hours. But I am very much committed at Goshen College to feel like if I take your tuition dollars because you're paying me for a service, I that's why I've tried to kind of limit our class sizes. Of placements are hard. That is our biggest challenge, and I want to make sure that we can get you guys placements. And make sure that at the end of the program you've gotten the experiences you need. So you work
Yes.
with me, I'll work with you, and we'll get to the bottom of this. But any last questions here for Gretchen on what was covered?
if when we are starting clinicals, like it would be more than 60 days. So can we do the drug screen even tomorrow if we register for that? It doesn't matter like if we are doing it earlier, like more than
Mhm.
2 months. Is that okay?
No, the only time I find that there's a problem is in your year three. If an organization wants you to have had it in the last year, then you would be left with doing it at your own cost. But we, as a program, we verified that as part of the affiliation agreement. You've had a drug screen. We're keeping up to date on your insurance so that any issues that happen are, you are billed. But then we also carry malpractice on you. So all that should be figured out. But if you're anything you upload into VCI, I would put as a folder on your computer because you may be asked to submit it again to a new clinical location, right? And so that way, if you have it already easily accessible, you can just put it in there for them.
So it doesn't have to be within a specific time before the
No,
start.
I haven't come across that yet. That's not to say it couldn't change in the future, but we've only the one that I see that sometimes they want to repeat and sometime at the organization in the beginning of year three that wants it. And so that's one. The other one is they often ask that we'll ask you at the beginning of year three about the TB. And we don't require you to repeat the TB screening. We require you to answer the questions of like, what's your risk level? Most employers are doing it that way nowadays too, just because there was a shortage of the testing. And to be quite honest, I'd much rather do it using the blood test rather than to actually do the TB skin test. It's not as accurate.
Thank you.
Mhm. Anything else? Well, if something else comes up, you know how to get a hold of me. Jewel knows how to get a hold of me. But I'm going to have you be sending anything you send to me, you send to her at this point. Okay. This is so hard to hand things over, but I'm trying so that I can
I've
pass.
got the baton here. It's an
Okay.
imaginary one, but I have it.
Okay. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Thanks
I
again,
have
Gretchen, for
loved
your
working
time.
with all of you. So good luck. I promise you'll make it to the next phase. It just feels rough right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care, everyone.
All right, you guys. Well, welcome to night one of class here. I put in the email to you all. We were going to do the quiz tonight. Clearly, I've opened that till Saturday, so I don't feel a rush on that. So again, between now and Saturday at midnight, go in, do that quiz, and that's the way the quizzes will be from now on. If you pop on one, it'll show you, I think, what the dates are of when you can open it and stuff. That is the one thing that I didn't just, a lot of the stuff I've opened of like today it's open and it's due the day that it's due. And then a week beyond that, I kind of have like a cutoff date. For the quizzes, I think I did make that a little bit more narrow. Just if you ever need something opened because you're at that point or something, you can always let me know. In the class, let's see here. I want to share screen. Let's do this. Hold on one second. Okay, so hopefully this class looks like most of the other classes you've had as far as how it is set up. So you will see the syllabi in your course. And then here that I have pulled up is the course content and kind of our schedule of what we're going to do during these, 7 weeks here that you're with me. So again, for this evening, you have these couple of chapters, which, Katie has the little videos and the PowerPoints for. As you can see, we were going to do that quiz one tonight. And then you need to be doing your PICO question. Last time I checked this afternoon, 3 of you had already put stuff in there, so that's great. You'll want to look in there in the Dropbox for the PICO question because it's very clear that it wants you doing something that is unique. So, Zainab, I know that yours is in there, so you want to look and see what did Zainab write about because she's already kind of called that topic. And so again, we want, if there's 12 of you right now, I want the 12 of you to have different sort of projects that you're doing in there. And then the other thing that you have to do for this week is there is an article in there that's called Biofeedback, EMG, Alternative Therapy for Chronic Low Back Pain. So you are going to read this article. I'm old school. If we had met tonight, I had beautiful packets printed out for you guys. So hopefully I didn't kill too many trees in printing off packets for something we're not doing. And it's all information that's in Moodle. It's just that I'm old school, so I like my paper. So again, whether you print off the article or just read it, you want to take some notes, and then you're going to do a like a reflection. And we'll go over this evening on what those look like. So I think everything seems, at least from my perspective, pretty clear in this class of like what the assignments are and what the rubric is and some examples and stuff, but I want to make sure you're on board with me before we leave this evening. So again, for this week, by June 22nd at midnight. I think I really rotated everything to June 23rd at 01 in the morning for my due dates. Those few things need to be done and turned in. Week 2 again follows the same thing that you're seeing here. There is a article on Moodle on hazardous drug handling. It says you're to read it for 3 different times. So I'm not there with you, but it says read it a couple of times and then complete your notes for that. And then there's a quiz on chapter 6 this next week, and so on and so forth. So I don't know that I need to go through all of these things. Here in yellow on week 3, you'll see that you're turning in some research articles for your matrix assignment. This becomes kind of one of the first steps beyond your PICO question in your research paper that you're doing. Here you're actually starting to get some articles on your research topic. Down here on week 5, you'll see that you're turning in kind of the second batch of research articles again for your topic. And then as we discussed, and I know for some reason this summer feels like it is flying by for me, so I don't know if you guys are experiencing the same thing, but I think we're going to be to the end of July before we know it, and you'll have your final projects and stuff. So I'm going to stop sharing this. You guys all have access to that in Moodle. Questions at all on the syllabi or the schedule for me before I pivot us into sort of assignments and going through the different types of assignments in the course? Okay.
So where can we find the rubrics for each assignment?
Yeah, that's what I want to show you next here, Amir. Great question, because that is, I think, the key part to really doing this class well, you guys. Okay, so here, if I scroll up, there's course information, your first tab here, that had the syllabi in it, that had the course schedule that I just went through with you. The next thing is this assignments and rubrics and resources. And again, if we were in class tonight, this is what I printed out. I thought, boy, if everybody could have this just printed at their fingertips, this would be so much easier, but it's okay. We have everything we need right here. So let's start with this research article. Like I said, for this week, you have this biofeedback article that you want to read. And again, I think that Katie, that developed the class, is probably right to say maybe read it a couple of times just so you feel like you're familiar with it. Trying to look and see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like it's about 7 pages long, you guys. This isn't a huge long article, but it's saying read the article, and then I think I'm going to start by showing you the rubric here. If I open this on my screen, you guys are seeing the rubric, right? Amir, you can see the rubric?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
perfect. We should be doing Zoom long enough that I should know this, but I just am double checking. So this rubric says when you read the article, these are the steps you do to complete the assignment. Again, each of these is worth about 20 points of your grade. You turn them in on Moodle. And so again, I will show you the example, but you'll see in the example that at the top of it is the APA bibliography of this article. The next thing that's worth 4 points in this assignment is what is the purpose of the study? And oftentimes, you'll find that right in the introduction. That's something in an article that they should be very clear with. What were you trying to even study in this? So what's the purpose? And then if there is a theoretical framework that they're using, again, pick that out of the article and you'll add that. The next thing that you're going to discuss is the correct identification of the design. What type of design were they using? What kind of methods were they using? I'm going to just give you the cheat sheet right here. On this first article, there's an abstract at the top of an article. An abstract gives you the quick and dirty synopsis of what is this article about? It says abstract, objective, or hint, purpose. What was the purpose of this? The methods is the next section. So again, right there. Brief description, I'm moving us down to the next thing that you're covering, a brief description of the sample size. So again, in this research, who were they talking to? What were the characteristics? That's like who's included. The characteristics of my study are I want nursing students that are getting their master's to be a family nurse practitioner, and I want them to not yet be in their clinical courses. That could be the inclusion criteria that covers the 12 of you. Who am I excluding? I'm excluding anybody that's not in our program. I'm excluding anybody that's started clinicals in this, that sort of thing. So again, who is in the study and who is not in the study. And then a list of the statistical tests that were used. When I was first looking at this, I added in my own notes that I wanted you to know why. Why were they using those statistical tests? I've taken that out. Somewhere else in this work that you're doing, it asks you to get into that. But I would encourage you, part of what you as a nurse practitioner or just you as an advanced practice nurse need to know is none of you are getting your PhD. You are not researchers at this point, but you need to be able to understand what is the article doing? Is this a comparison between two groups? Is this trying to make a correlation that as my weight goes up and I'm more obese, that I'm at higher risk for these other diseases? Is there a correlation or is there a causation that, boy, I smoked for 20 years and now lo and behold, I have lung cancer or something that's definitely caused one for the other sort of thing. And so again, it doesn't ask you to do this here, but I would just say from an interest standpoint, use whatever AI platform you want. Sarah, tell me the name of the one you mentioned to me last week.
Did you say Sarah?
Yeah. What was the
Tell you the
AI?
name.
You told me a AI platform that doesn't use as much water.
Oh, Chat GPT Echo.
Echo. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to be good about that because I am very aware of that. So again, like you could even put an article into Chat GPT and say like, help me understand why they were using these statistical things. Again, you don't need that for this because this is just saying give me a list of the statistical tests that were used. And then what's the result of the study? I only want up to 5 of them. So again, if there's a whole long list of what the results are, you're picking the top 5. Let's see if I can. It's going to allow me to go back. Okay, now I want to pop us into an example. Example assignment notes. So here you guys can see on this example right at the top, here's the APA citation. Maybe put your name on the top, although you'll have submitted it into Moodle. And so I will know this one's Brenda's, this one's Amir's, this one's Amy's, whoever's submitting it. So a name is helpful, but not necessary here. The study focused on X. This was a pre-test, post-test, quasi-experimental design. The sample size included. They used a paired two-tailed t-test and a one-way ANOVA test to look at the statistics of this. Here are the 5 bullet points of the study. So again, when we're doing the reflections on these articles or the analysis of these articles, it's a bullet pointed, just give me kind of the down and dirty of like, what is it?
Jewel,
Yeah.
I can't see it. I can see
Oh, you
your
can't.
Moodle one.
Okay, hold on. Thank you.
It
Stop.
could
I
be me
missed it.
though. Sometimes it's me.
Nope, I see other people shaking their heads. Hold on.
Okay.
You have to click your downloads.
Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you guys, this is where it's going to get a little clunky here with this online. But yeah, again, same thing I just said. Now you can see it. At the top is the APA citation. Just a bullet point. What was the study about? This was a pre-test, post-test. Here's what the sample was saying. Here it's very clear where my cursor is. The exclusion criteria were insulin-dependent diabetics, if they had an A1C greater than 9, blood pressure that was, high, they were inpatient, they did not speak English or Spanish. Wonder what they were speaking then if that was part of the exclusion criteria. CHF, post-MI. So again, what kind of statistical test was used, and then what are kind of the 5 main points of the study, you guys? So just a real quick synopsis of like, what is this article telling you? And again, you'll have 5 of these that you need to do throughout these 7 weeks. So about every week, there's about an article that you're reading and kind of doing a quick analysis of what was this article telling you. So we obviously have quizzes on chapters, and we have these articles that we're doing. I'm going to jump us to a standalone kind of activity, which is a DEI essay, and then I'll bring us back to the matrix and the final thing. So I think that makes the most sense of walking you through stuff. So hold on, and let me close out some tabs on the back end here and get us to the DEI assignment.
Jewel,
Yeah, Zainab.
the article, do we have to paraphrase like the purpose, or can we just type out the purpose as we see it in the article?
So you're kind of asking a plagiarism question, and
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if you just write it for this, not for your paper, but for this, I don't care if you literally copy and paste it.
Okay.
Okay. It's not like a turn it in sort of there's turn it in places where you do things, and then there's just regular assignments. A turn it in thing would flag this of like, oh, here's your plagiarism score. Irregardless, no, I don't care. This is literally, can you pull the stuff out? Can you read an article and pull out the content? So like, if you can find that, that is fine with me. Okay. Share my screen. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna ask the annoying question. You guys can all see this assignment. Okay, thank you. So here is another assignment that you have for me in this class. Starting with chapter 9, you will kind of read about the importance of really looking at people holistically, which I know we've been talking about the whole time. But when we think back to, I guess I should have spent some time just like asking you guys all that research question. I'm sure you've taken a research class in your past. And, when I teach research or when I'm teaching healthcare ethics, I am constantly aware that, things like Henrietta Lacks, that we use her DNA to this day to do different things, and that she never consented to that. And so, again, as we're thinking about research, we need to be aware of vulnerable populations of, we don't tend to do research on pregnant women. We don't tend to do research or experimentation on children. We don't do experimentation on prisoners. Like there are vulnerable populations that if you're going to do any sort of research with them, that they require extra considerations and stuff. And so that is sort of the spirit of this kind of assignment a little bit. And obviously at Goshen College, and you guys are sort of a testimonial of, I cannot wait to get to know you guys more. In a way, you kind of are like the United Nations of like nursing school here. When I look at you guys, I'm like, this is a really, really cool group that we've assembled here. So again, having a very diverse group of students is really important to us. We want to be preparing a bunch of different walks of life and aspects that you guys as nurse practitioners are going to be amazing, because you may have a patient that comes to you and is like, awesome. You completely understand like where I'm coming from and stuff. So again, that doesn't mean that we just don't meet people where they're at, but you as a group have me very excited. So this essay is asking you to kind of grapple with some of these questions. There's no right or wrong to this. It's really your own kind of thought process. What articles can you find to kind of support your thought process? So again, you can use your text, chapter 9. You can also use the Goshen College Nursing Department statement, and then you need to find 2 to 3 outside sources that help support your work. This is not a long paper. This is 3 to 4 pages. She suggests that you're using size 11 Arial font, double space it. This doesn't include your reference page. This assignment's 100 points here, you guys. So you're asking, who is nursing research for? When we do nursing research, who is benefiting from this? Who are the stakeholders that we are doing this for? The next question is, why is diversity, equity, and inclusion important in healthcare? When we don't take that into consideration, kind of who is harmed? That's not the question that's being asked. It says, what benefit does it bring to healthcare? And then give an example of a recent research in this area. Again, if you have spent any time in my simulation lab for undergrads, you will know that one of the things that is near and dear to me is the fact that I really struggle with the fact that our African American or Black women have way worse birth outcomes than other races of people, and it's like that is well documented in research, and so that's one example that I'm giving to you here. Why is nursing research important in the context of DEI? So that goes to like who is harmed when we don't think about this. Give an example of a diversity, equity, or inclusion type of research in healthcare and briefly describe what question researchers were asking and what conclusions did they find. Who should be included in nursing research and how do we make sure this happens? How does our understanding of DEI affect how we interact with nursing research? And in doing research for this assignment, have you encountered any roadblocks or difficulties obtaining information about this subject? As I mentioned to you last class, our librarians, although I was not impressed with the hours that they are open, they are willing to work with you. So again, if you email them and say, hey, here's something that I'm working on, can you help me find stuff? You can email back and forth without taking the time to go there. You just kind of have to be proactive with them. So here are your reference requirements for this. One of your reference sources should be a peer-reviewed research article on some sort of topic related to this. Here is a note that Katie puts in here that, we are all aware of the political climate and that laws have changed, possibly limiting access to using the terms DEI. A lot of that stuff has been scrubbed and stuff. And so again, she's not expecting that your article per se like mention specifically DEI, but you're kind of looking for that spirit of like, how do we include people who are not included in research? And maybe there's a good reason for that. So other resources could be of your choosing. You can do an interview, you could find opinion papers. This is an opportunity where it does not all have to be at the top of that kind of evidence pyramid as far as like the highest level of rigor with our research. So it gives you a little bit more of an open thing here. And then she, again, this is Katie's work, so she gives you some kind of resources here that you could use. Now we're moving on. Here's where she copied and pasted some of the Goshen College, sorry, it's kind of cut off, Goshen College Nursing Department statement. So here is our vision, our mission. Here is the diversity, equity, inclusion statement, our different outcomes. We have these 5 pillars that we are kind of fall under at Goshen College. And then here is where we switch to the Department of Nursing. Sorry, that was the college as a whole. Here is the Department of Nursing stuff. And I did like that in this week that one of the slides that Katie was showing you guys is very much that there is a connection between theory and I love nursing theory. You guys can roll your eyes at that if you want a little bit. And I know you've taken your nursing theory class, but the theory and research kind of go hand in hand in how we are dealing with people. And so again, this is a nice call that our philosophy of nursing is grounded in the meta paradigm of nursing. So when this goes back to your theories and your grand theories, the meta paradigm of nursing is defining what nursing is, the environment, health, and personhood. So hopefully you would see those four things come out. And then what Katie is asking you to consider a little bit is how would we do a better job of integrating verbiage on DEI into our meta paradigm of nursing? And these are her kind of red words. And I thought they were kind of thought provoking here a little bit. And so again, she offers these things to you as you are doing this assignment. I don't think that she gives an example of this assignment. And again, that's probably because there's not really a right or wrong. It's more of an opinion paper. If you get to this point and you're really stumped, ask me and I can look up previous students' work to kind of help guide you. But again, no right or wrong. It's more of a thought experiment for you guys to really kind of grapple with this topic. I'm going to stop sharing my screen on that and just pause to see if anybody has any questions on that activity. Sorry, had to let my schnauzer back in the room here. Did I miss any questions? Nope. Okay, perfect. Okay. Next thing that we're going to take a look at is that matrix. Again, I pointed out in the syllabi those two yellow times in which you are doing a matrix. So let me pull that up for us here. Okay.
We're getting crazy lightning over here.
Are ya? Okay, Sarah. If I lose you, this is being recorded, but I will get us through these last two things. These are your matrix assignments, you guys. Again, it's due twice throughout this course. I'm giving you the example because the example uses the rubric, so it's a nice 2-for-1. On the left-hand side, you'll see that you owe a citation, a theoretical framework, design type, variables, measurement methods, statistical analysis, the researcher's interpretation of the finding. If this feels like a more robust sort of thing that I was having you do, the little bullet points of the articles, you're right. This is a more in-depth sort of matrix. So you are to find articles related to your PICO question. Obviously, that is the topic that you are hoping to research in this class, and I'm going to read your PICO questions and sort of approve those of like yes, or I might ask some clarifying questions or say that might be too narrow. Should we broaden it a little bit? I'm going to help you kind of with that. But again, you need to start to find research articles that tie to your topic. So you are to pick by that week, you're to have 2 research articles. You're going to upload both of those so I can read both articles. So for the 12 of you, that means I've got about 24 articles to read. And then you're going to have picked between article or research article A and B. I really am leaning towards B. I'm going to do this on B. So again, here is a completely filled out sort of example. It uses the same article as before, I think. I'm kind of going through all these different pieces. Do I need to do more with this, or is it enough to kind of know here is a good example of like one article and what you need to fill out in this, in doing this? You guys would want to basically download the rubric out of Moodle, do it in Google, do it in Word, whichever one you operate in, I don't care. Fill this in, and then you gotta, once you're done, upload it into Moodle. So this is the metric matrix assignment. You do this on 2 articles. You have 4. So again, at the end of the day, you're going to have 2 kind of early on in the class that you give me, and you're going to do a matrix for 1. And then at another time, you're going to have 2 articles and you're going to do a matrix for 1. So this looks like it's kind of, I mean, it doesn't look the most fun if I'm being honest with you, but luckily you only have to do 2 of these. So, just stop sharing that with you. The other thing that I put in there for you guys, ooh, I'm getting the lightning and thunder now too, is something called a prisma diagram. It's clear as you are getting into your paper thing that you are to use some kind of methodology for tracking all the research you're going to do. Here on my shelf in my office, all of these are different doctoral students' work. And so again, when they did these papers for me, they are using something called a prisma diagram. And so, not saying you guys are doctoral students, but I put into the Moodle 2 kinds of prisma diagrams. One is designed out of Google, one is designed out of Word. And so I thought if you're a Word person, you can use the Word model. If you're a Google person, you can use the Google model. I am not married that you have to. Nowhere in the assignment does it say you have to use this, but it is just a fun tool for you to really kind of itemize what are the articles that I looked at in doing this research. Oh, let me plug in my... Sorry, guys, you're getting put on pause for 1 second while I go get my plug in. My apologies there. It gave me the warning that I was going to die, and then it started beeping at me. So a prisma diagram is just basically saying at the end of the day, you looked at 10 different articles related to your topic and you threw out this one because it really didn't meet the inclusion criteria you wanted. You used this one. And so it's just a way of tracking at the end of the day, how many articles did you use in your research paper and why did you use them, or maybe why did you not use them? So again, if you have questions on that, you can let me know. I just was kind of like, here's a little step towards your next educational step, which is a bigger research project. So enough said on that. Let's tackle the last thing, which is your final paper and project, paper and presentation. So let me pull that stuff up. Okay, last thing here. So your culminating project in this class is obviously this paper and an 8-minute presentation on it. So, again, step 1, develop that PICO question. And then there's 4 parts to this. The project's worth 30% of your grade, and there's 150 points possible. So part 1, that's due this week. Come up with your PICO question. Doing that is 5 points of this grade. Submit it, and I'm going to give you some feedback, like I said, and give you some revisions or guidance as needed. Part 2, again, submit a minimum of 4 research articles. The first 2 are due July 6th via Moodle. The second 2 are due July 20th, again, in Moodle. So I have to read those so I can actually even look at your matrix and be like, yeah, you're on the right track. These are worth 20 points. The articles must be original research, again, from a high-quality, peer-reviewed journal. They have to be published in the last 10 years. Newer is always better. Articles need to be related to your question. That's obvious. It has to be answering something that is of benefit to what you're trying to work on. Again, I need the PDFs or some way that I can actually read these articles. Matrix 1 will be based on one of your 2 articles. So again, I've already said that. You owe me 4 articles and 2 matrix. So again, by July 6th, of those 2 articles, you're going to pick one and do a matrix and turn it in. By July 20th, you're giving me 2 more articles. You're picking another matrix and turning it in. The final paper is due the last night of class, July 29th. I need it into Moodle by 5:30 when we meet. That paper alone is worth 110 points. The format of the paper is Times New Roman, 10-point font, double spaced. The paper needs to be no more than 8 to 9 pages in length. That's not including your title page. That's not including your reference page. And the final paper is going to include 3 sections. An introduction to what your clinical question was. What is the problem? What is the purpose? Again, this has approximations. That should take you about 1.5 pages. What is your search history? Again, that's where you could use that Prisma diagram sort of method. You could even put that in there and say, Jewel, here's a clear depiction of like how I went about gathering and tracking my research. You need to tell me, what was the inclusion criteria you used? What was the exclusion criteria? What were some key terms? What were limiters to, what type of journals you were looking at? How many articles did you actually find in your search? And then how did you narrow them down? And that's why that Prisma diagram helps you walk through step by step. Again, that's about 1/2 page to a page, just telling me, how did you go about like looking at your articles? Then, for each of your research articles, you need to give me a summary of 30, that's 30 points. So for each article, I need 1/2 page to 1 page summary of the article. Include the research design and the important findings. So again, if you were a doctoral student, this is what you would be doing, is kind of give me a summary of your literature. And then a good paper says, now that I've reviewed all this literature, this is the synthesis. These are the main themes that came out. And this article kind of said the same thing, that if we tackle these 5 things, we would be doing a better job of caring for X, Y, or Z. So again, that synthesis is the main point of like, based on your research, what are you learning about this topic? And that's 2 to 3 pages. Then you have your references and citations. I want to look, this is Jewel's homework, and then I'll send you an email. I feel like you would need more than 4 articles to be doing this well. So I want to talk with Katie and kind of give you a ballpark of like, if you have 6 to 10 references, that's probably reasonable for this paper. So I feel like you need a little bit of a target. I don't need Zainab turning in 20 articles and Sarah turning in 2. No, she'd turn in 4. Like what's the real benchmark that we're looking for here? And then, like I said, we got the presentation. So again, on that last day, 8-minute presentations, about-ish. That will get us all in and done in our 2 hours. You need to do some PowerPoint slides for me just on kind of these buckets here. Those buckets being an introduction. What is the problem? What is your search history? The summary of your research articles, the synthesis, and then the references. Those would be kind of your slides that you're talking to. Dress appropriately, use good grammar and sentence structure, keep me interested in your subject matter, and make sure that it fits in those 8 minutes. Here are some topics that Katie mentions that you could consider. But again, as I mentioned to you guys, I'd really prefer that it's your own sort of authentic area of interest. I think I'm going to stop sharing this because again, it's in Moodle. Questions on your final project here, you guys? Do you agree with me that I need to give you some parameters on how many research articles you need? Okay, I'm just like, if I was in your shoes, that would help me of like, what does it really take to do this thing? Okay. I think the last
Yes,
thing I
I'm
need to, oh, go ahead.
confused about that because as you were going through the rubric, it said we needed 4. So we
Yeah,
don't need just
what,
4, need more?
that's what I want to clarify. If that is the expectation that Katie had before that gets this done is 4 articles, I need to know that. So that's I want to find that out, Annabelle, because yeah, I mean, because I read it the same as you. It only talks about these 4 articles, but can you really do a research like? Then why are you doing the research and narrowing these articles down? Like 4 seems like a very arbitrary, like you just need 4. Well, maybe there's more out there. Like, so that's just a Jewel question. I need to clarify that, and I should have done it before this evening, but I'm just giving you my behind the scenes thoughts there for a second. Um, You guys, I really wasn't gonna do much in the way of like office hours per se. I've done them in the past, and I feel like I'm just kind of sitting on a Zoom and nobody's popping in. So it sounds like you guys have a group chat, which I've always had with people that I'm in a group with. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. If you guys talk amongst yourselves and you're like, "Oh my gosh, she absolutely needs to have like some designated time that she's going to be on a Zoom and we can pop in and talk to her." You say that to me. I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy. I am very tied to my phone and my computer and stuff. So if you are writing me a question saying, "Hey, Jewel, I am stuck on this," as I said to you before, if Amina has a question, I'm going to assume probably everybody has that same question, and I'm going to like blast out my answer to everybody. So I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy. I am your instructor. This is my job to be giving you my time and stuff. And so I am happy to have sort of set office hours too. I'm going to pause for a second. I will let you unmute. If you want to be the brave person that says, "Jewel, absolutely, you need office hours," tell me that now, and I'm happy to do it. I will also take that feedback 2 weeks from now when you say, now that we're into this, we really need your office hours. So I'm shutting up, and it's your turn to talk for a second.
I would say I'm more of a by appointment only kind of gal.
Okay. That is the spirit I'm going to go into this with of like, I am happy to make an appointment one-on-one with you. If we really get stuck, and I say we because I'm right there with you. I've not taught this before and I'm not teaching it next year. So I'm not really super invested in wanting to make a bunch of changes to the class necessarily. But if we get stuck on something and we're all there together, we're going to problem solve it together and be like, yeah, this is actually what we're going to do with this. So okay, again, fair game. You change your mind 2 weeks from now when you're on your own and you're like, "Holy crap, we need her." That is what I'm here to do. So do not hesitate to change your mind. Um, what else is helpful here? We have 1 more hour of class. We're not going to use it if we don't need it, but anything else that you guys need from me to feel like you have what you need to kind of be launched into this virtual research world?
Clarify, our final project will be based on the research on different articles related to our topic, but
Correct.
we are not conducting any research, new research. We are not collecting any data of, in regards to our question that we will select.
You are
Correct?
correct, Amir. I am viewing this very much like a doctor of nursing practice. So when I got my DNP, that is saying I have a question that I want to know, and I want to know what research is out there. And I need to look at that research. And in a DNP project, I'm actually creating a plan. I've done this whole research. Here's the plan that I'm going to do to like try and improve something, like a quality improvement thing. But it's different than a PhD where you're actually doing the research. And that is not what you guys are doing here. It is really, are you good consumers of literature? Can you understand how to understand that there's a topic out there? Can you find literature to support that? And that question of, do you understand the statistics of like, what was this article trying to tell you? That's the level you guys are at, is can I access research? Can I understand it? And then ultimately, you're going to be using that to benefit your patients. Hey, I'm going to subscribe or prescribe you X, Y, or Z treatment because I think that's important. Zainab, I looked at yours. Yours is maybe sticking out in my head. Do you mind if I talk about your PICO question for just a hot second? I think, if I'm correct, that Zainab was looking at like the topic of obesity, and we're quick to use GLP-1 medications. God knows I've benefited from that. I've lost 80 pounds using them, but it's like that is one modality. Are there other things that would be as effective that maybe have less cost or are more accessible to people? And so again, that is a great thing for her as a new FNP to know of like, yes, there's these medications, but only certain people can qualify to get insurance to help, and then they're very costly otherwise. So again, depending on somebody's socioeconomic status, they can't afford them. So what other therapies could I offer, or suggestions, or appointments to help support people? So again, that's just one case in point of like, what is the research telling us, and how can we help translate that into helping our patients? So long answer for your question, but no, you're not out setting up research studies. Okay, other questions here, you guys?
I,
Will
Deanne.
you be? Oh, sorry.
Oh, Deanne, then Sarah.
Will
Oh,
go ahead,
okay.
Deanne.
Sarah can go.
Okay.
Okay.
Quit
Will you
fighting
be
over
giving
me.
us feedback on what we just submitted for our question?
Yes, absolutely. Hold on, I've got to look at my calendar. The 22nd is Monday night. That's when I have things due. Had to refresh myself for a hot second. My commitment, you guys, is I really feel like it is the only way that this is going to work in 7 weeks is if I really am staying on the ball, if I'm honest, and giving you guys all feedback. And so, yes, like I said, 3 of them are already in. Maybe in the time we've been here, I might have more before the evening's out. So I might start looking on those early. If you're in there, I'm going to start giving you feedback. So yes, I mean, the only way this works is if I'm kind of like, yep, you're on the right page, keep going. So yes, that is my commitment, that you are going to kind of get a thumbs up from me, like, yes, Sarah, love your topic, go do it. Or I really like your topic, but should we make it broader? Are you going to find research on this? Should we focus on this versus this? So, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if I'm the only one. I feel completely lost. I feel like I'm not gonna know things until I start doing them and
Yeah.
working on the stuff. But I'm also kind of like, how are we supposed to get all of this done in 7 weeks? In addition to still continuing to do all of our assessment, asynchronous stuff. So I am completely overwhelmed. And so my questions will be probably coming up, and you'll get emails and things from me as things come up. Because I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah. And that therein lies the problem with prior to about a year ago, you guys, assessment was done in 7 weeks, and then you moved on to research. And so you didn't have this overlapping of priorities. And this isn't new. The last year group, I think, said the same thing to Gretchen, and she kind of gave me a heads up of like, they're really focused on health assessment, and then they kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of have to do research, and your minds are already spinning into clinicals and stuff. So I fully understand that. And you guys give me the SOS of like, oh my gosh, Jewel, we're drowning. Um, Although I value the DEI assignment, if I'm honest, Katie said you can take that out, you can leave it. And like I said, I wasn't really necessarily feeling like I wanted to remove things from this class, but that is one thing. And I don't mean to place any value, positive or negative, on it, but like if we get to the point that we're drowning, that's an easy one that we're going to say, okay, we don't need to write this article for you guys to know that it's really important to really be looking at individuals and treating them with care and compassion and blah, 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 blah. So I appreciate that, and just continue to be honest with me, because I think the paper is an important one. There are some things I think we have to do, and then there are other things that I'm like, maybe there can be some give and take. Okay.
Can we just remove it today and that could be our agreement? I think that would help lessen the stress.
Okay,
I love
all in favor?
I love you,
All in
Zainab, so
favor? I've
much.
got a motion. I've got a motion from Zainab that we remove the paper. Oh, I have a second from Sarah. We're doing
Yes,
this like it's a
please.
meeting. Oh, okay. All in favor, raise your hands. Caitlin, we're going to raise her hand even though her picture's there. Okay, there you go. See how easy that was? All right, problem solved. We've taken the one thing off your plate. Deanne, I don't know that that solved all your problems, friend, but like, there we go. It's a step in the right direction. Again, 7 weeks, we got to kind of stay with our deadlines, but like, keep talking to me, you guys. I get what you're
Yeah,
saying to me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Just, speaking for the class, really, like I know for me, I'm thinking about this final that I'm supposed to do for assessment today. And yet I was also like freaking out about this quiz for your class, which is not any less important because
yep.
I also don't want to, start off your class like half-ass, excuse my language, and not
No, I love
focus
that.
on it. Like it's
Yeah,
equally important, not only for what we're doing here, the NP program as a whole, but it's a requirement. So it's like we're just trying to juggle everything. And then a lot of us are, with that burden of we didn't even have placement for clinical. So we're like that's a constant hit in the head.
absolutely. And those are just the school stressors that you named, Annabelle. You didn't name dealing with your kids, dealing with your spouse, dealing with your work, all of those things. So again, I get it. You guys are juggling a lot right now. It's summertime, so kids are at home or whatever your life situation might be. So again, our job is to get the 12 of us that are here through the summer and into your clinical next year. So we all have the same goal of that. I will address sort of the elephant in the room, or maybe it's not on your mind. I really don't know if Janae is continuing with us, you guys. Just to be honest, I've been on the periphery of some of that. So again, I just named she's not on our Zoom tonight, which is a little bit telling, but I don't have a complete verdict on that. I try and be pretty I mean, it seems pretty obvious you're not a group of 100 people, so when somebody's missing, it's kind of like so anyhow, just naming that. Um, okay, I'm here. I've got Gretchen's baton, so we're going to work together here to get us again through the summer and into this next year of I'm awfully excited for you guys. It's a huge undertaking. I don't take that lightly. I've said to you from the beginning, I admire everybody that goes on to a program like this. This is not an easy nursing degree to get. And so my hat goes off to you guys from the pathophysiology that you've learned to the pharmacology to how much you're taking your assessment skills seriously. I mean, quite honestly, that does my heart good. That's the type of nurse practitioner I want to go to, is somebody that really is applying themselves and trying to do this to the best of their ability. So, yes, those are important. You have your sign offs coming up whenever those are coming up for you. You have your 3Ps test that you need to do and stuff. So, yes, that is important. And research also is important, that it guides our decision making, but I you're not hurting my feelings with this. This is just the reality of kind of where we're at. With that, and in that spirit, you guys get an hour of your time back here this evening in the storm to either just weather out the storm here safely this evening is my hope for you guys. Yeah, again, I hope this was the right decision for you all. I hope nobody's like super upset that we didn't do it in class. I had chips and salsa. I was at Hacienda. I had it ready to go, and I was like, oh, looks like we're doing this virtually. You can have the chips and salsa back. So go have an evening snack here on your own, I guess. Again, I'm a email away. Email me if you need me. Okay, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Hang in there, you guys. I'm rooting for you. So we do this. We're going to do it together. All right. You're dismissed. I'm ending our call. Bye.